fine to me. Any other objections about that? I think it might just mean that like the presentation from the community fund or about the community fund might be a little later, but I don't think the committee assignments is going to take us very long. So I'm
Great.
okay with that plan. Connor, go ahead.
Is there any benefit to hearing the third quarter financials before the pool discussion?
It's an interesting question. I don't see Kelly.
He's here. I think might be okay with moving that.
Okay, that might be good context for that. I agree. And I know some folks may want to join the conversation for the pool discussion, but it's kind of later anyway. So I think that makes sense. Great. Any other thoughts or comments on the agenda? Okay. All right. So there's one other note that I want to make about the agenda. I know Donna is not here, but at the end of the last meeting, we discussed having a hard break time at 8:30. And so we're going to basically when 8:30 comes around, we're going to interrupt whatever is happening and take a break. Even if that means like we're in the middle of discussion or if we can find a good pausing place with whatever presentation is happening. Just I think for our own, sanity and health. I think that's good. All right, so just want to make a note about that. And I think that is it for the agenda. All right, so on to general business and appearances. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to make a comment on anything that is otherwise not on our agenda. And if you would say your name, where you live, and try to keep your comments to 2 minutes or less, that is very helpful. And then if you have something that does pertain to something on our agenda, then you can make that comment adjacent to when we take that topic up. All right, so I see, so you can either raise your hand in the function, or you can physically raise your hand. And I see you there, Peter. Awesome. Go ahead, Peter.
I would just like to take a couple of minutes on the subject of what we might learn from the parking garage situation. In the week or so since the Hilton,
I might. We are going to be taking up a discussion of the parking garage later on.
Yeah, what I have to say is not about the parking garage.
Oh, okay. Well, carry on then. Sorry. Thank you.
It's what we might learn from what has happened over the last 2.5 years.
Okay, go ahead.
So in the week or so since Hilton had made the announcement, most of the media coverage, including the city manager's report, has focused on the negatives of the outcome, which is completely understandable and, of course, I think even needed, as it's very important that all of our citizens understand the costs of the litigation and money and time and opportunity costs. But I like to think that we can soon begin to move on and use this episode as a learning opportunity, that each of us might ask ourselves, what might I have done to have prevented this sad ending? What did I do that may have contributed to it? And most importantly, what can I do to avoid such problems in the future? And I think this is particularly important for the mayor and the city council to do as you continue to address the problems and opportunities of the pandemic and the federal money that seems to be promising to be flowing into Vermont from the COVID Relief Act and from Biden's recently proposed jobs and infrastructure plan, which includes a good bit of Green New Deal thinking. Perhaps this is time for us to dust off the visioning plans that were submitted to Sustainable Montpelier Coalition contest a few years ago, and also to critically revisit the downtown plan that left many of us scratching our heads just before the pandemic. For myself, I would like a little mea culpa here. What did I learn? Well, when the vote came up for the funding, I voted for and my wife voted against. Or wait a minute, maybe it was the other way around. Now, I'm just kidding. not ha-ha kidding. I'm kidding seriously. I don't really remember which of us voted which way because we didn't really give it any careful thought. We weren't tuned in. We weren't paying attention. And what I've learned, and I guess most of you have seen over the last couple of years, I saw that if I'm going to be a responsible citizen, I have to pay attention at all times, not just to what is being presented, but to think about how whatever is being presented affects the people who aren't here, the less powerful, the less privileged, the less represented. And that's what I'm going to keep on doing. That's what I've learned. I hope all of you will each ask yourselves, what have I learned? What can I do better next time around? Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. I appreciate that. Other thoughts or comments?
So if you're on a phone, you can unmute by hitting *6 and just speak up. Also, I had a email request to speak from Laura Rose Abbott. I'm not sure if I see you on, so if you are on, I apologize for missing you.
I'll speak after Laura if she's on. This is Steve Whitaker.
I'm here.
Okay, go ahead, Laura.
I'm just observing at this moment, but I am here. Thank you for recognizing me.
Yep, go ahead.
Oh, I'm just observing at this point, so thank you for recognizing me, and I'll stand by.
Okay, all right, never mind then. Thank you. All right, Stephen.
Following on the prior, not related to garage specifically, Steve Whitaker. I think we've got a problem. This continuing division is the deeper problem, and the what's coming out in the papers and the reporters and in the op-ed and the bridge, etc. There seems to be some alternative facts, which is going to continue to fester and divide the community. That needs to be addressed. I think a independent fact finder to untangle that mess and get to the real facts is going to be needed, because otherwise it's like he still won the election, et cetera. So we need to quit fact bending and or whatever outright falsehoods on either side are persisting. So let me recommend that the council consider retaining a fact finder to get to the bottom of the issues that are alternative facts that are being bandied about, so that we can reach closure on what happened. Public toilets continue to be a problem, as are the increase in the street people population the street sweeper is leaving behind as much as it's picking up. I've sent photos to Public Works about this. Either use some of the COVID CARES money to get vacuum cleaners, send a second truck behind the street sweeper, but it's leaving, small ridges of mud which turn back into dust. I like the idea of the dunk tank at the circus where the politicians get knocked into the water. I'd love to see our city council sit out on the street and eat dirt for long enough to make the problem take the problem seriously. The traffic I've sent to Donna did once example. I know there are pending permits for Consolidated to cut some of the streets. They need to put multiple conduits underneath to support competition and open access. We cannot allow one vendor to cut the streets and then have another vendor or CV Fiber come in and have to cut the same streets. So this is something in the lack of an ordinance already in place and permitting. They continue. The flaggers are hiding behind the trailer at State and Main yesterday while the traffic that is trying to go through from East State onto State has no visibility and no way around the cage that they had built. It's dangerous, and our poor sheriff, retired sheriff deputy, is just sitting in his car smiling like the world is just fine. So those are Wi-Fi at City Hall and Wi-Fi at the library are grossly inadequate, even to download tonight's agenda. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Bill?
Yeah, just quickly, I want to belabor this, and I'm sure we do have an agenda item on the garage, but since there's a lot of people on and press, I'm just going to say unequivocally that the city has not released any inaccurate or false facts. And if somebody wants to tell me where they think we did, we'd be happy to have that conversation.
Okay, thank you. Any other, anyone else want to make a comment? Okay, I'm not seeing anyone. I don't see any hands or anybody physically waving. So we are going to move on then. So that brings us to the consent agenda. There's a number of items on the consent agenda. Is there a motion? Go ahead, Jack.
Move the consent agenda.
Second. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, and opposed? All right, so the consent agenda passes. And we are up to the Above and Beyond Award, which I believe there are 2 recipients this month. And am I turning this over to Cameron or to Bill?
Me.
Okay, go ahead.
So thank you, Council. I'm really excited. We are now going to be completely caught up and on time for our Above and Beyond Awards now. So I do have 2 again this month. I really want to thank Jeff Wilson, who's our water treatment plant chief operator in our DPW department. He's been working for the city for almost 25 years now. He was nominated multiple times, and I really just want to highlight how people talked about how Jeff leads by example and that he takes huge pride in his job. He really has gone above and beyond in setting up new shifts for the water plant to ensure operator continuity and safety in the face of COVID-19. And has been a really great example for his team. So they really wanted to thank him and nominate him for the Above and Beyond Award. We have another nominee and winner from our DPW Streets Division, Paul Grant. He was also nominated twice. He was, his nominations highlighted his dedication to the plowing of the sidewalks by himself, basically, this winter, and said that he's often asked to go above and beyond his job description, and he jumps across divisions without complaint, and that he often helps overnight with our water sewer divisions to address water leaks, which really is above and beyond his position. So we just want to thank both Jeff and Paul's for their commitment and dedication to the city. So thank you.
Yay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Paul. We're so grateful for your work. Please pass along to them our gratitude. All right, so moving on to the Homelessness Task Force presentation, which we didn't get to last time. So I'm so grateful to have you here and early in our agenda. So thanks for being here, and I'll turn it over to you, Ken.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Glad to be here. Although it's not really there, but anyway, glad to be here. And we have a good team today. We have Rick DeAngelis, Zach Hughes, and Don Little of the Homelessness Task Force here to represent us. And we have a very nice PowerPoint to sort of lay out where we are, where we hope to go. We really do appreciate the great engagement by everyone here taking these issues seriously. It really is heartening how hard people are working on this. Very difficult issues, can seem very frustrating at times. A lot of trauma, a lot of suffering, a lot of folks whose lives are on the line. But there are also a lot of really good-hearted people engaged in systemic change. And you all are amongst them. And thank you for all that you do. So Cameron, can you kick it into gear on the multimedia platform, please?
I can. Hold on just a second for me. I've got about 20,000 windows open.
Oh, it's more than normal.
Cameron, would you email that if you would, please? I don't have visuals.
I will.
Thanks.
We have, okay, so here is our vision and mission. Homelessness Task Force believes that everyone, regardless of their current housing status, are entitled to safe, high quality, and accessible housing in a reasonable expectation of health and happiness. And our mission is to identify and understand the needs of the individuals who are experiencing homelessness in Montpelier and the surrounding areas, and to make recommendations to the municipality and its partners to address those unmet needs. And Rick, I think this is your slide to address.
Thanks very much, Ken, and good evening, everyone. And thanks to the council for having us on the agenda tonight. The situation we have right now is with people experiencing homelessness is unprecedented and very, very concerning. And when I am referring to the situation in the city and in our county and really in the entire state, last year in January, we did what they call a point in time, which is the number of people who are counted as being homeless, experiencing homelessness. And so this is January 2020. That count was 172 people. Now the count, and I'm referring to today, I got the numbers for today, it's 358 in Washington County. And if we break that down to Montpelier, I think when I did this slide, it was 63 adults and 10 children in Montpelier. It's a little bit less on this day, but not a whole lot less. So most of those folks are staying in motels, and in Montpelier, that's at the Econo Lodge. But that's not everybody. There are a number of people living in shelters, and there are some people who are living outside. So as you can see, that is a huge increase. And the question on the task force's mind and people who are thinking about this, concerned about it around the state, is what is going to happen over the next year, and particularly with respect to all the people who are living in motels now. And yes, we all know that there is a gush of federal resources coming for building housing and so forth. But it's a funny thing. Even as people are placed in housing, affordable housing, they get opportunities. And that's happened quite substantially over the last year. The numbers are not going down. They've pretty much held steady. And I do think the resources are going to make a difference, but it's going to take some time. It's not going to happen in the next 9 months or a year. It's going to be over several years. So that's the situation. So what happens to all the folks in the motels? And when I wrote this slide several weeks ago, and we were fully expecting that there was going to be a fairly sudden changing of the rules for people living who have assistance to live in motels. Subsequently, there's been a task force that's been formed at the Agency of Human Services, including a lot of advocates and other folks. And they are trying to find a solution or a plan so that the reduction in the motel rooms is more gradual and has less impact on folks. But the key question here is that right now, the hotel vouchers are paid for by the FEMA program. And when the state of emergency ends in Vermont, so will the funding through FEMA. So any motel stays are going to will need to be paid for by the state of Vermont. And this is a very expensive program. So just to bring it home again, who knows? It's very hard to project this accurately, but I'd have to say that I'm expecting that there's going to be an increase of people on the streets in Montpelier throughout this year and probably into next year. We're doing what we can. We now have, thanks to the city of Montpelier, in fact, we have a street outreach program. Dawn Little, who's here tonight, is our staff person. And we are also working very hard to develop a new facility in the Barrie, Berlin, Montpelier area. And we're working on a project right now. And I hope I can have an announcement for you soon that happens. But we still have a very challenging task ahead of us. And with that, I'll pass the baton over to Ken.
Ken, we cannot hear you.
Oops, I just said a whole bunch of stuff. Okay, so sorry about that. Our charge, identifying gaps in the system and communicating between agencies, continuing to work on access for services, including restrooms, identifying communication gaps, acting as a clearinghouse. One thing we talked about doing is, because we're in the state capitol, there is visibility about these issues here, and in coordination and working with city council, we love, any positive messages on the challenges, things we can be part of, identifying additional housing resources, helping to push the envelope on that, organizing access to food. There's been a lot of improvement on that over the last year. And of course, just general advocacy for those experiencing homelessness in our community. And here are some successes in the last year: advocating to the general public and policymakers for humane responses to homelessness, providing a clearinghouse of information between stakeholders in a timely fashion. And I just want to say that really does add up to a lot of value. The exchange of information between people who are on the front lines of this work in real time as things are changing quickly is crucial. That's also happening on the county level and on the statewide level. So there are a lot of people just sort of doing the Vulcan mind meld together on the challenges and what needs to be done. We helped establish the coordination of meal providers, making sure, addressing gaps there, and then the inventory and expansion of available porta potties in the community. We've advocated for the necessity of street outreach worker and leading to Don being hired by Good Sam through the city RFP. And we helped bring attention to the need for a public Wi-Fi spot in the front of City Hall in a safe and central location. We've created a fundraising program related policy to have funds available to folks working on the street outreach workers, the police department, Susan Lemire and others. And we've partnered with Good Samaritan, VCIL, and Disability Rights Vermont to get smartphones to folks. And of course, that can be crucial, being able to communicate and dial for services and other needs. And we have more to do, of course, coordinating with existing resources, who's doing what and where can we add value, advocating for systemic change. The area winter shelter system has been challenging and unfortunately will continue to be a need. And that includes very difficult to serve folks who have a hard time being indoors and whose plight we're all very aware of. And then in their longer term, goals, continue to work with stakeholders, continue to, for big systemic change, continue on advocacy on legislative issues, And there's definitely been, some good cross-pollination with those efforts. And following funding for all these services closely and update you all as necessary, and continue to advocate for some of these basic services like lockers and restrooms. Needed resources. And I think I saw that this first one, we have some new old friends joining us, committed council representatives to join in meetings, and advice and perspective on collaborating with other city related committees. We do have Carolyn Ridpath on our task force is going to the housing task force tomorrow, and see, putting our efforts together and how we can help get more housing in the city. And don't send too many emails, just enough. No, anyway, happy to be in touch. Really happy with such an engaged community. So I think that's the end of all of that. Dawn or Zach, do you have anything to add to all of that? Any thoughts? Zach, go ahead.
I just want to say that this committee is really working really hard, and it actually goes beyond just the meetings. We network as well if we need to, and that's very that's very good. And it's one of the first committees that I realized that we're getting some serious work done here. And I think there are still going to be some challenges, and I have worry at night when I go to sleep, but I worry about when we go back to regular, because at some point the state of emergency will end. So I do have a worry about that as well. So fellow committee members, we have that worry. We're hopeful that it won't be as bad as we're kind of thinking, but I just want to say I want to thank the council for being receptive and for the support from the community, and acknowledge that we have much more work to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. And Don. Uh-oh. I think you might have a signal issue, Don.
My perception is to the issue of homelessness. And anyway, can you hear me now?
Keep going. Try it out.
Yeah, we can hear you a little better now.
Okay. Just from my point of view, the existence of the task force has really brought a lot more attention to the issue. More people helping, we have better communication, we have more donations, and it will take some time. It's not like we're going to solve all the problems immediately. There's a lot more work to be done. But in the meantime, for the people who are outside, this has made a real mechanical difference, in street outreach, in terms of transportation, warm clothing, fuel, things like that, helping to prevent Lyme disease. Received a donation from an individual for tick spray, for less hypothermia, less Lyme disease, which is definitely out there. So from my perspective, at least on the immediate mechanical level, which is what people tend to be very aware of when they're outside, I do believe this is making a difference, and I do.
Great. Thank you, Don.
Okay. Well, yeah. And I just, I have to say, PowerPoint's not my strong suit. But the humanity and the people's lives who are at stake, it can never be understated. And there's a common conversation with folks in these situations, and they'll look at you and you say, you get to go home at the end of the day. My life, essentially my life is at stake. The urgency of this is extreme. And I know that we've had conversations like this with most of you, and there are a lot of people working with that sense of urgency. with that sense of what's at stake. And it can be incredibly difficult work. People burn out, but there's also a lot of really genuine, beautiful human connection in all of this. I mean, the people turning out late at night when someone's in trouble on the street, and the cooperation between people in different agencies and sectors is just really, it is a testament to the human spirit. But another part of the human condition is there's a lot of suffering and disregard sometimes. I mean, we're all working at being better people and taking care of each other. And anyway, I'm giving a speech now, so I'll stop. But anyway, anybody else on our panel have any follow-up thoughts? And then we should probably pitch to questions, right? Okay.
Great.
Right. Enough of that.
Well, I at least just want to start and say that I am enormously grateful for all of you, for all the work that you're doing. It is hugely important to our community, and I know you have a lot of things that you're working on right now, and we are always eager to hear how we as a council can be supporting you. I know we had conversations a little while ago about lockers, and I remember I had some questions about that, but if or when that gets resolved, let me know how if there's any way that the council can support you through that, or just as things come together, keep us posted.
Will do.
Yeah.
And it was interesting that when we were up last meeting, the topic preceding us was about energy efficiency in homes and fine-tuning the algorithm for heat within the homes. And I thought to myself, well, this is kind of what we want too. We want people in warm places, and obviously it's a different. That was we're dealing with much broader brush. We want folks, inside, out of the elements. And it's wonderful. A lot of folks showing up to give donations, cook food. It's a big, heavier lift to provide housing and shelter for folks. And so I just can't not implore folks to please help push that, help identify places for folks to live, help build the Good Landlords Club, folks who are willing to take a chance on somebody, help develop. There are a lot of positive conditions now to develop housing. There's a lot of rental assistance, a lot of caseworker support for folks moving into housing. That's part of what the influx of money is about. There's not enough money, capital money, for building the housing that we need. But I mean, there are just, I think, I don't know if the numbers, a few weeks ago, it was 2,700 people in motels statewide. And so a good percentage of those, or some percentage of those, is going to be flushed out onto the streets. And so can we bend the curve enough, between now and then to make a structural difference, a systemic difference in the situation? Sorry, everybody.
All good.
All right. Anyway, that's a signal for me to stop. Sorry, more questions.
Madam Mayor, Steve Whitaker here.
Yeah, before you go, Stephen, any comments or questions from council? Connor, Connor and then Dan.
Yeah, sure. First off, just echoing you, Mayor, it doesn't feel like too long ago that we even established this task force. And already, I think you're making a real and immediate difference in people's lives. Like the number of times you hear about Ken, just making phone calls to make sure somebody has a bed at night. It's very clear that this isn't a passive committee, and you're really committed to the work. I was wondering, I know it's probably a pittance as far as getting someone back in maybe a more stable situation, but the stimulus checks that come out, how do we make sure folks who are experiencing homelessness are getting those checks from the federal government? Because it seems like, it could go a long way in the short term, at least, just to, get someone food, a roof over their head temporarily.
Yeah, case, I mean, we have like another way we have people helping with that. I'm sure Rick has folks doing that. Case workers are helping people. And it's sad to say there's also, I mean, I can't help not thinking about it. There are folks with substance abuse challenges who, given a whole pile of money, can find themselves in danger. But obviously, that's not a reason not to help everyone try to get what they're entitled to.
Yeah, thank you. Dan, go ahead.
Thanks. A couple of questions, and I'll just throw it out either Ken or Rick or Zach or Don. The PowerPoint talked about this increase in the homeless population. Do you have a sense as to where that increase is coming from? Is this housing instability in the area that's creating this rise?
Rick, I think that's
sure. I'll take a crack at that, Dan. Well, we have a tight housing market in central Vermont, that's for sure. So that's a contributing factor. But where, how did the number double in the last year? It's that's a very important question. There hasn't been any kind of data analysis of that, but I think it indicates that a lot of people were very marginally housed, and perhaps they were just hanging on in and out of homelessness. And now with the pandemic, the housing markets have frozen up. People are staying in their apartments, and also there is the opportunity to get a motel room. So that's, I think, the best answer I can give you, Dan. Some people have said, well, are these people moving in from out of state and so forth? By all accounts, I think that is a very small number of the people who are in the motels in Washington County. There could be some, but our experience is that these are mostly people from central Vermont.
And as a follow-up to that, is there, is it your sense that that number is going to grow over the coming year, as if housing becomes more unstable then by extension, and that may be sort of begging the question?
Well, that's my sense. I mean, we've got two opposite things going on here. On the one hand, there is some increases in supply. There are the units coming online. There's more rental assistance. There's a lot of case management support, stuff like that. But on the other hand, you have there are going to be people who are getting evicted because there was an eviction moratorium. So I think there are forces working both ways to increase the supply of units and also perhaps increase the number of people who are tenuously housed or losing their housing. So I haven't heard any projection or analysis yet of how that's all going to sugar off.
So one more question as well. Do any of you have any dates or senses as to when these housing vouchers that are basically funding these hotels are likely to expire? And as a sort of compound question to that, is there time for that eventual deadline to try and match people in a much more systematic way to housing?
Well, I'm going to go again on that because I think a lot about that's the $24 million question right there. And the vouchers end when the state of emergency ends. And the question is, how much of the bill will the state pick up after that? And the reports that I've heard is that the state of emergency is probably going to end in July. And I'm hopeful that the state is going to continue to pay for some portion of that need. And we don't know yet how much. And yes, we're all scrambling, doing whatever we can. We're trying to buy a facility to be ready as people are leaving the motels and don't have better options.
Thanks.
Lauren.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, first of all, just echoing the gratitude, seeing it all in one place. Maybe PowerPoint isn't your favorite, Ken, but just seeing the summary of all you have accomplished is really inspiring, and just so grateful for the dedication that you all show and volunteering and doing all this really critical work. I just had two quick questions. One, so the way I've heard some of the American Rescue Plan Act money, so the amount that came to the state for rental assistance is essentially more than we can possibly spend. And there's some concern that, like, even if we paid everybody eligible's rent for a year, like, we would still send money back given the way they wrote the constraints around it. And I'd heard there was some like creative thinking of, could we make the hotels housing that could be eligible for rent or other things. I'm just curious if there's been any progress in trying to access that money for longer for more people, or if there's things the city could do, like designate certain areas housing or something in a way that would make people eligible to be able to access resources that are there. It would be such a shame if we sent money back that's there to help people right now. So I was just curious what's happening with that, if there's anything the city can do to help either within the city or to advocate at the state level to adopt.
Sorry, team, that I'm talking so much, but I think about this stuff like all day long. So, the problem with the rental assistance, there's a lot of rental assistance right now. There are very few units out there. I mean, we've actually housed very few people in the last few months, and they're on waiting lists, and they have rental assistance, but the units aren't opening up. It's a tight housing market, so that's one issue. Could we use that rental assistance to maybe creatively take advantage of the motel units? I know there's been talk about that, and I know Vermont Legal Aid has been looking at that question. Well, I'll tell you, I hope we can get out of these motels. They're not great places to live, and my preference would be that we do not memorialize and make this a permanent situation. I really think the focus should be on good housing options. We've got opportunities in this city. I mean, I can't tell you how many buildings that I've looked at or talked to people about that could be developed, and it could be decent housing. And it's just going to take will and determination and pushing, and from all the different players, the city officials and the developers and residents as well.
Thanks, it's really helpful. I guess my only other question, just kind of reflecting now that you've been around for a couple of years, I mean, just how do you feel like the support level? So, we've funded you at a kind of fluctuating level, and the support, I have the sense that Cameron works really hard with you all, but just curious if what you feel like in terms of the support you're getting from the city. I know some things are like projects that would cost money, like a public restroom that's on our list. But other than that, do you have any recommendations for how we should be thinking differently about how we're supporting you, or do you feel like it's a pretty good, amount right now?
No, we want less money, first of all. No, I thank you for what you do. And I mean, I just want to say that Cameron works really, really hard, and her heart and dedication and competence in all of this is really wonderful for all of us. And how much she holds this work. Similarly, we've had good experiences with the police department, with Susan Lemire, the embedded social worker, with a lot of you council members, Bob Gowans, Public Works. I don't want to leave anybody out, but we're an engaged community with a lot of heart and progressive mindedness. I don't think you're going to commandeer, the rec center and turn it into housing or something like that. But, I do, could we do a tiny house village on some city land somewhere? You know, just where can we push the envelope here? How can we think about, you know, in our master plan for the city, how can we design in the reality that there are people living on the streets, and that they need some kind of shelter? I mean, I think of the sustainable Montpelier thinking, and, you know, is there a sort of sustainable social justice structure for the reality of the human plight that we can think about? You know, yes, you're the ones with the purse strings. We're grateful for whatever you do. You know, I know that with the influx of federal money, maybe there's, you know, some creative thinking and things that can be done. That's my answer. I don't know if anybody else has a thought.
This is Zach, and I just want to say we've come a long way since when I was down in Washington, D.C., and watching these concerned citizens talk in the audience about things that were concerning with the business community and all that. And we have come a very long way since then, in the first meeting we had. And I just I have to echo Ken a little bit here. We're just doing a lot of good work here with a little more to do. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Any other comments or questions from council? Okay, all right, so comments from the public. Stephen, you are up first, and then we'll go to Morgan.
I will skip the gratitude platitudes. I want to basically take a reality check here. It was 2 years ago that I was prevailing upon the council to create this task force. It was a year and a half ago where the task force was given a charge. They have executed on 0 items of that charge. There is no plan. There are no lockers. There are no bathrooms. There are no showers. So we're really deluding ourselves to think that this is, you know, an effective effort. I warned you that the numbers were going to go way up, and now they have. We even have old retired vets a retired vet who was burned out of a housing authority, and the management there won't give him another room, even though there's an available one right next door. So he's sleeping in a burned out apartment that's been gutted and hasn't been sheetrocked yet. And calls to, you know, Dan to get calls to Rick to get this guy into a hotel, no return calls. You know, Rick told you last time that, oh, call me and I'll get that guy in this, you know, in a hotel. I don't have his number. He knows I don't have his number. And the guy walked away into the cold night. There are people sleeping out at 10 below, not too long ago. And we're pretending that we're doing the best we can and it's all laudable. I mean, get a grip on yourselves. We do not have a plan. The first creative idea that I heard tonight was a tiny home village, but that's about a year and a half too late, and you can't pack people into warehouses. The new shelter model is going to be the same jail model, jail food. You know, sweep them out the door. I thought it was fascinating to hear the word flush them out of the motels. I mean, this is absolutely disgrace of human dignity or indignity that we are foisting upon these people while we're deluding ourselves. So yes, I'm angry about it because I've been 2 solid years trying to get y'all to face this, and you can't get city hall bathrooms open. You can't get the transit center bathrooms open. You can't arrange a shower with a church that has unused showers. You've done nothing, you know, and yet we're going to keep, you know, patting each other on the back and expressing how deep and so very grateful we are. You know, this is a real epitome of self-delusion, and we've got a real crisis on our hands that's about to get worse. So I have made every effort to give the people who seem to have a chance to put it into progress my ideas on what needs to get done. None of it has gotten done. I warned you against packing the task force with vested interests who are invested in the status quo, and that's exactly what you did. And that's exactly what you should have expected out of it, which is nothing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Morgan.
Yes. Hello. So, if I recall correctly, I'm having trouble remembering his name. Oh, okay. Connor Casey raised a good question, and that was about the stimulus checks. And Ken Russell did answer it some. I had previously come across a page on the National Coalition for the Homeless website concerning this very issue, although I'm having trouble finding the page and the link right now. But I did come across a March 18th, 2021 article in USA Today that actually says, yes, people experiencing homelessness are eligible for the stimulus. And that's the third round, the $1,400 stimulus. And although Carmen and others might already be aware of that, making that a reality for folks who are living homeless, locally, is another matter, and getting it addressed and making sure people get their stimulus checks. So, and that takes a bit of work and outreach and all that. So, and I appreciate those who are not only interested in it, but who are attempting to make sure it happens. And for myself, I just want to say, as a member of the public and a former member of the Homelessness Task Force, I do think that the members of the task force are attempting to do their best and have been trying to do good work. And it's not an easy task to do. And there is a lot more to be done. And that's been mentioned. And myself, I'm going to beat the drum of beat before that. I do think the city council has ultimate responsibility, and they could be more supportive, and I implore you to do so. The task force had come to you previously about different things, and there's previously been some reluctance on certain issues and matters, and I implore you to do better. I thank you for what you have done, but you can do better. And I'm gonna keep beating that drum until you hear it. So if you want to be, if you want to stop hearing from me about it and others, please, when the task force comes asking, don't turn them down or don't underfund. And that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. Anyone else from the public interested in weighing in, asking questions, making a comment? Okay. All right. Well, thank you again. And yeah, we look forward to hearing from you further.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. So we had moved up the committee assignments to just after the Homelessness Task Force presentation, because this is an item that we've put off twice before. So hopefully we can get to it now. All right, so just as an FYI, Donna did send me the committees that she wanted to be on, and it's going to take me a minute to dig that up.
Would you like me to share, Mayor, the list that we have so we can like live edit it?
Sure, yeah, that'd be good.
I mean, if I can figure out how to do that.
Is that something that you're gonna put on? You're gonna put on the screen?
Did it work?
Oh yeah. Okay, great. So Donna is hoping to be on the CIP, the CVPSA / TAC, which are dash TAC, which I'm not sure what the TAC is.
Stands for Transportation Committee.
I think she meant the Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission TAC. She said CVPSA, but I think she meant RP.
Okay, that would make more sense.
And she's been on it before.
Okay. Also the City Art Committee, MTIC, and the MyRide, formerly the Microtransit Committee. So I know that's kind of a lot to process there. And I was looking at my list, not at the list here. But does that track with what she was on before?
Yes.
Oh, she was not on the Capital Improvement Committee previously.
So is she asking to not be on the park committee again?
On the which committee?
The Parks Commission liaison?
Oh yeah, I guess not. That is not one that she listed. She also did say, note that Dan and Doug are the CVPSA appointees. So she is not on that. Okay. Other than that, I think it's probably fair for us to go through these, just starting from the top. Is that okay, team? Okay, great, awesome. Okay, the ADA committee.
I'm on it, and I'm happy to stay on it.
Anybody else interested in being on that committee? I wonder if it can actually take more than one person.
I don't know that it can. So if someone else wants to fight me for it, that's okay. This is one of the committees that does meet during the workday, but it's usually not a problem with my schedule to be there.
Yeah. Now,
Jack, are you suggesting it couldn't make reasonable accommodations to allow another counselor?
Irony.
I would never suggest that.
So because I cannot see everybody, just speak up if you want to jump in. All right, the Building Code Appeals Committee.
I'm happy to stay on that.
Me too.
Okay, anybody else interested in that one? Okay, Capital Improvement Plan Committee.
I'm on it. I'm happy to stay on it, but if Jay would prefer to, I mean, probably one of us should go on to the park liaison that Donna's given up in lieu of this, and I'm happy to do that as well. If you have a burning desire,
I'd have a preference to be the park commission liaison, if that's okay. So I'm happy to stay on this one too, because I know it's not really much of a time commitment, just sort of a one-time-a-year thing, but that would be something I'd be happy to do. The parks piece.
The parks part of it. That is something that I am interested in staying on with as well, but we could only have 3 of us, I think. But if but Jay, if you would like to stay on, I'm happy to step aside.
No, that's no problem. That's, yeah.
Okay.
I'll take a pass. That's totally fine. Makes sense.
All right, fair enough. All right, Regional Planning Commission was vacant.
So Mayor, this is Mike Miller.
Hello.
So I just wanted to mention the Regional Planning Commission is usually usually a planning commissioner, which has been Marcella Dent over the past 2 years.
Okay.
So she would be staying on, and I usually fill in as the alternate.
Okay. Any objections to that, team?
Nope.
Okay. Thank you. That's very helpful. Looks like, is anyone else interested in being the TAC representative to the Regional Planning Commission? Okay, this is going to be Donna. And then, I mean, I feel like we just, I think we just elected Dan recently to the CBPSA. So I'm assuming you're wanting to stay on that?
Yes.
Yes, okay. All right, and solid waste management has been Donna Barlow Casey. I did not check to see if Donna was on before. Kind of wonder if it's safe to assume that she'll do it again.
I think it is. She's
That's a
pretty
safe assumption, yeah.
I think she is. I think she's pretty engaged.
Okay, great. If she doesn't want to do it, we can always come back and revisit it. All right, the Community Justice Center.
I'm having trouble with my schedule in that one. I don't think I'm giving it what it needs there. It's usually like a Tuesday at 5 o'clock or something. So if anybody else wanted that, I'd be happy to give it up. I think we do need somebody decent on that. Or I can just do my best to keep trying to make it.
Other thoughts there, team? Anybody up for that one?
Just so folks know, it is a quarterly meeting.
I mean, I'm happy to do it if Connor, if you're looking to step down.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Awesome. City Hall Art Committee. I don't know that we ever met. I don't think actually, to be fair, I wasn't on it, I guess. Did you all ever meet?
Well, there was the pandemic happened, and so when things shut down, we haven't really had a chance to meet. But I've actually put some feelers out, have some ideas for once things loosen up a little bit, for folks to be able to we get some art back in. So I'm happy to stay on, and Dan and Donna, it's up to you guys. Or well, I don't know if Donna wants to stay on it. Dan, it's up to you. But sure. I think once the building is a little more open, then I've got some folks who would love to present work there. So
awesome.
I'm happy to stay on. Make
Great.
it easy.
Great. Energy Advisory Committee. I'm happy to continue as well on that. Lauren, any thoughts?
I'm happy to stay on there as well.
Okay. Anyone else? I think there's not a limit necessarily. Well, we just can't have a quorum, but if anybody else wanted to join in, that would be okay too. Okay, I am also happy to continue on as the Harry Sheridan Scholarship person. Homelessness Task Force.
Those are usually morning meetings, right?
We're currently meeting every other Wednesday at 11:30 to 1.
I'll go on if nobody else wants it.
Awesome. Thanks, Connor. Housing Task Force.
I'm there.
Okay. Housing Trust Fund.
Same thing.
I should check in. Anybody else want to be either of those reps? Okay. The Investment Committee.
I mean, I just learned how to read those pie charts. So I may as well stay on.
Fair enough. Anybody else interested?
Unless anybody else wants it.
Okay. And Montpelier Live Board.
I'm happy to stay on. Things are going well.
Great, great, excellent. Thank you. Montpelier Foundation. Oh, so
I had a question mark next to mayor because I don't really know if this is still a thing. Y'all discussed it might not be a thing at your last year's meeting.
Right. So I actually have a little bit more information about this now. Apparently, the way their bylaws are written, it just says that the mayor specifically gets to appoint someone to their board, and they had found someone who was interested, great, a young person actually, a high school student actually. So I've since, actually just within the last month or so, made an appointment of, so her name is Koya, Coyah, Mosher, Mosher, and yeah, it's hyphenated, but I forget what the second hyphenated name is. So I'm going to get back to you about that. And it's her first name starts with a C. Sorry. There you go. So I'll dig that up here momentarily. Parks Commission. Oh, right, because Donna was stepping down from that, and Jay's going to do that. That's great.
Happy to. Thanks.
Awesome. The Social and Economic Justice Committee.
Happy to stay on.
Okay. And anyone else wanting to jump in on that one? Okay. And Koya's last name, it's Koya Mosher Kamara, which is Camara. Great. Okay. All right. So we are up to. Did we? Okay. So the Transportation Infrastructure Committee.
I'm not sure if we need two of us on there.
Okay.
So I think I will. I might talk to Donna about it, but unless she feels strongly that we should both be on there, I'm probably going to drop that.
Okay. That seems fair. Anyone else interested? Excuse me. Okay. All right. And the TW Wood Board.
I'm happy to stay on it. Actually, I don't think the connection was made with the TW Wood Board people. So, because I just checked their website and they haven't listed me. I don't know, Cameron, if you have contact, I can reach out to them.
I do. Yeah, I'll get you connected to them.
Okay.
Okay. Great. All right. Well, I think that is it. Thank you, everybody.
Mayor, I was wondering if we should maybe add a Police Review Commission and the My Ride Committee just to that list for the future there.
Oh, yeah.
My Ride's like, that's a pretty busy committee there. I imagine Police Review is too.
Yeah, we should do that. Is that, and if I recall, all right, so Donna wanted to be on the My Ride Committee. And Connor, were you on that as well?
Oh yeah, no, I'd like to stay on that if that's so. Okay.
And then Lauren, you were, and was it? And there was somebody else as well. Yeah, Jack. Right. Okay. So, and do you want to continue on that?
Oh yeah, we're right in the middle of the work. Okay. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Any other committees that we are leaving off here? Okay. All right.
No.
Oh yeah, Jay, go ahead.
Sorry, I'll just throw in. I was going to mention at the end of the meeting, but the school safety, the SRO committee is finishing up its work, making its final recommendations to the school board as we speak. And I'm not there; I'm here. But so just so we know that piece, which was a council which I represented the council for the weekly meetings since the fall, but that piece is wrapping up, is not ongoing. So for what it's worth, it's not something we have to keep an eye on moving forward.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Great. So we're going to move on here to the E911 road naming first reading. So I'm going to open up a public hearing on the road naming ordinance change. And I believe I am turning this over to Mike.
Yep.
Okay.
So good evening, everyone. Mike Miller, I'm the planning director for the city. And tonight I'll have a quick presentation and we'll just go through what's gonna be proposed. Do you want me just to share the screen, Cameron, or, okay. And let's go to this. All right, so the first thing I wanted to just mention, this is the first reading of the street naming and building numbering ordinance. I might also refer to it as the E911 ordinance from time to time, and it's just you'll see as we go along. There's just a lot of overlap between these two concepts, and they're kind of the same thing. But if I say E911 ordinance, this is what we're referring to. So I'm just going to go through a quick summary and some next steps, and then we can take some questions. And I'll also have one recommendation at the end for us to go over. So the existing ordinance, which you have in your packet, is Chapter 3, Article 6 under Public Works. It was originally adopted in 1970, last amended in 72. And according to the ordinance, the Public Works Director is responsible for road naming and for numbering all of the addresses. And there are a number of reasons that we need the new ordinance, not the least of which is we really should be meeting the E911 requirements. And we haven't actually been following our current ordinance. So we really need to codify what we're already doing in practice, which is road naming has been done by council. You'll remember Gin Lane that we did. We've already been having council naming the streets, and we've already been having the E911 coordinator addressing properties, which the E911 coordinator is Audra Brown, who is in my office here. So this proposal that you have is going to be a strike-all replacement of the existing ordinance, because the existing ordinance just doesn't have a lot in it, and most of it really doesn't pull forward. The authority and purpose of this ordinance, it's based out of Title 24, Chapter 59 and 61, specifically number 16. So the purpose is to protect public health, safety, and welfare by establishing a uniform street naming and addressing system. And this is specifically to enable emergency services to locate every address and structure. The issue we have is that while we have an ordinance right now that kind of does this, it's not consistent with the rest of Vermont, which could impact, it hasn't, but it could impact a mutual aid call because our numbering system is inconsistent with what somebody from another town might find. And most importantly, the number of spaces, the spacing in the current ordinance is not sufficient. And therefore, we have roads that have run out of numbers. So what we mean by that is not that there aren't numbers at the end. Obviously, you could keep going up in numbers, but you need to number each structure with a separate number. So if we have, say, 39, 41, and 43 Berry Street, and there's a building between them that needs a number because somebody decides to put in an accessory apartment or somebody decides to do something in an old carriage building, we wouldn't have a number give it, because all of the numbers on the odd side of the street have been given out in that sequence. So we would have to have a number out of sequence. So it would have to go 39, 45, 41, 43, because we've just run out of numbers. And obviously that has obvious issues. So Hubbard Street, Berry Street, and Cumming Street are three of the streets that have buildings that need an address that we cannot give an address to right now. So there are three streets that have this specific problem. So the structure of the ordinance, really simple. There's a discussion of the administration, which is that it will be run by the E911 coordinator. That person will handle all of the processing. If it comes to council, that person will address the issues, bring them to you. The rules are in section 603 and 604. 603 talks about street names, which will still be decided by city council after public hearing. 604 talks about how we do building numbering, which is addressing. We will, as a note, be keeping our existing system of odd numbers on the right and even numbers on the left. That is not the standard for the rest of the state, but that will be, the E911 has already said that's okay for us. It'll still be administered by E911 coordinator and be consistent with the E911 rules board. Enforcement, this is required of any ordinance adopted under Title 24, Chapter 59. So although it might seem strange that we have this discussion of designation and penalties, it is designated as civil. So if there are any violations, they would be civil offenses and not criminal. There are penalties. I don't see this as being something that will happen very often, but it is a requirement of the ordinance, so that's what they are. And 607 talks about the severability clause, which is also not required, but recommended by our attorney. So the next steps, once adopted, our E911 coordinator will systematically review and renumber non-compliant streets. Obviously, we'll be starting with the problem streets, and we've already talked with Chief Gowans, and we will be getting some assistance from the fire department and getting the word out, checking for compliance of numbering on buildings, because the fire department's going to need to do pre-planning anyway. So if we've renumbered a street, they're going to want to make sure they are familiar with the numbering system. So if we've renumbered a building and they now have new apartment numbers, they'll want to understand where the apartment numbers are. We do have some streets that are already compliant. I believe Town Hill, Taylor Street, and parts of Elm. There may be more streets that are already compliant. So we're not completely starting over with every single street, but there are a lot of streets that are not compliant with the system. So we will have a lot of street numbering to do over a number of years. Some sections of the downtown will be probably left to last due to the amount of impacts it will have on buildings. A lot of the issues are that, especially in these block style buildings, typically every door would get a number under our old system. And so renumbering the downtown would require a lot of changes for businesses when it comes to a lot of their advertising and other pieces. So it'll be probably one that we get to the downtown last because of the impacts that it could have on businesses. And road naming will continue to be city council, as we pointed out earlier. Road names must be unique in the city and surrounding towns. This is because our post office covers other towns. So the E911 coordinator at the state will review those to make sure that, we might have a proposal for a street that we can't do because there's a similar one in the town of Berlin or Middlesex. But we also, when we get there, we'll have to rename a couple of streets. School Street and School Ave exist in the city right now. Scribner Street and Scribner Place also exist, although I don't know if there are actually any structures on Scribner Place, but it does exist on our road maps. So we will have a couple of renaming of streets when we get there, but we obviously will be prioritizing keeping the used streets. Like School Street is a very busy street. We wouldn't rename that street. We would rename School Ave, which is over by Domino's Pizza. I don't even know if there is technically an address on School Ave, but there may be one. So the one outstanding question that I mentioned at the start is, all of our ordinances are grouped according to the responsible parties. So this road naming ordinance is currently in the Public Works section. It is section 6. It's chapter 3, article 6. And the one option was that we could move this to chapter 17, which is titled Civil Defense, but it is where we have the emergency management pieces. And so I've talked to Donna Barlow Casey, and she's fine with having it removed from her Public Works section. And I've talked to Chief Gowans, and he said he's okay having it added to Civil Defense. So we do recommend moving it, but to avoid confusion, I didn't want to just jump right to this. So, if council wants to move the entire revision to chapter 17, we could certainly have a motion in order to do that. And it would just be Article 2, because there's only one article currently under the Civil Defense. So this would be Article 2, and it would not impact any of the other numbers in chapter 3. And that is because this was the last article in chapter 3. So we would simply be taking the last one off the end. So, and with that, I will turn it back over to you guys and take any questions that you might have.
Great, thank you. Dan, go ahead.
Sure. Mike, in section, I think it's 604, where it talks about the numbering of the streets, where you're importing the old system of even on the left, odds on the right. Something I never quite understood is how do we determine, I don't think that's an issue for an existing street. They are what they are. But how do we determine which is left and which is right when we're dealing with a new street?
So usually the official numbering will start at the busiest street. So there used to be an old system that would say it's the one that's closest to the post office, but E911 has a system of ranked streets. So if you were looking at, say, Taylor Street, we numbered Taylor Street when we did the transit center, because it actually had been called 1 Taylor Street, and it was going to be the first building on the street. So we actually renumbered Taylor Street to make the transit center 61. And we contacted E911, and they said numbering would begin at Memorial Drive, because that is the primary street. It is superior to State Street. So that's where number 1, and then it measures out a set distance, which is why the first driveway for the transit center makes it 61 Taylor Street, just to give a little bit of.
So I'm just wondering whether any of that needs to be in this codification, codified in the statute, because it strikes me that we're importing a somewhat antiquated system. And I don't expect this to be a really big issue, and I wouldn't want necessarily like a 3-page statute just on this numbering system, but I'm just wondering if there is any type of reference, or if there should be language for exactly that type of situation like you describe on Taylor Street, of where do you start, and whether the statute the ordinance should reflect that.
Yeah, I think what there is a couple lines down. For most streets, there's a logical start point at which addressing should begin at 0, generally at the section of the street which connects to a larger or more frequently traveled artery. It isn't more specific than that, but
are we referencing state?
I didn't catch that.
Sorry, Bill, you might want to keep your camera off, see if that helps.
I was just saying, aren't we referencing the state 911 guidelines anyway?
So the reference to the E911 says newly created buildings that qualify for numbering above and requests for renumbering shall be submitted to and reviewed by the E911 coordinator and the Vermont E911 board for conformance with the E911 board addressing standards.
So it does effectively reference what the state's requirements are, basically through that review.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we could make it clearer if folks want, but that's.
I mean, my only concern is that, because and it makes sense that we're continuing our system just simply because it's this inherited legacy system that applies to most properties that are ever going to exist in Montpelier. But my concern is that just a certain amount of clarity if the city and the E911 board stop singing from the same hymnal, and there is some question or disagreement, or in like the transit center where there might be some vested interest in giving it a particular number, and the E911 board says that isn't going to work. Again, I don't want to necessarily overthink this, but I think maybe just a little bit more clarity would be helpful for me in the ordinance.
I mean, there's always, in talking with Audra, there's always a certain amount of flexibility. If people had pushed and said they wanted to have it be 63 Taylor Street, it probably could have very easily been 63 Taylor Street. But I know there was some push that people wanted it to have a dynamic name, and they wanted it to be called 1 Taylor Street because they thought it had a flashier name, and that was rejected because it wouldn't be consistent with the numbering system and wasn't close enough to be given any amount of flexibility. But yeah, I'm open to suggestions. I don't know how to accomplish what you're hoping for.
Okay, maybe it is something where that there's a certain finality that the E911 board would have over these decisions, because that's essentially the way that we're acting now. And the way state statute kind of authorizes them to give them that power. So I'm just thinking maybe it just would be a clear direction. I'm happy to take a look at it, and maybe I'll send you some proposed language, Mike.
Okay.
Other thoughts, questions, comments? Okay, so just so I'm clear about this ordinance, the ordinance itself doesn't necessarily change anybody's number right now. It just basically gives clarity as to how that process works and what the numbering system will be.
Correct. And
yeah.
So going forward, I think there's a certain assumption that we will be doing some renumbering in order to bring us into compliance, and that will be as fast or as slow as as council and staff can manage that. I know it is in our strategic plan to start renumbering, and certain streets, as I mentioned, will have to be renumbered probably within within this year. We probably would go through and try to get some of the key renumbering done that has to get done for those Hubbard, Cummings, and Berry Street.
I will also say that I am irrationally excited to rename School Ave something else. I feel like we should ask them, like what if there is one address, if you could call it something else, what would it be? And then that at least that street will be, the naming of it will be in compliance. So that's for another time, though. Any other thoughts or comments? Yeah, Jack.
I move that we move this to Chapter 17 and schedule this for a second public hearing at our next meeting.
Second.
Okay. Any further comments? Any comments from the public? You can raise a hand or physically wave. Oh yeah, Christine, go ahead.
I did not expect to speak on this evening, nor did I even know that this was a problem. But just wanted to point out, as I'm sure you all would be aware, the enormous challenge that is going to be presented to downtown retailers if they are asked or forced to change their street numbers. The repercussions of doing that to downtown retailers feels pretty drastic to me. So I just wanted to draw attention to that challenge, and, you know, perhaps ask city councilors to consult with Montpelier Alive, or, you know, just consider that deeply before you move ahead with it.
Yeah, thank you. And Mike, do you want to address, are there any exemptions for downtowns?
So the board is willing, in the same way that the board has been willing to accept our odd even switch. Our downtown is a relatively small area. And so again, when we're talking about emergency response, what's most important is the ability to find things. So if we exempted the downtown, that would probably be okay, because what the firemen or policemen would be looking for in an emergency situation, they would be told to go to 23 Langdon Street, and they would be looking for a door, as opposed to 23 Langdon Street, Suite 1, Suite 2, Suite 3. It almost would be easier for them, because the buildings are all connected, just to look for the doorway. They already mapped a number of these buildings because a number of them connect internally anyways. So I don't think it would be an issue to exempt the downtown. And I think what we would have to do is to draw out some lines that would go through and say, here's we're going to continue with the existing numbering system for Main Street up to, a certain point. And I don't think it would have a dramatic impact on emergency response, just because of the buildings are so interconnected anyways, and most of them are pre-planned. The important ones are once we get out to where we have individual buildings, that those end up being consistent and correct. Now, if we end up with a Main Street where for whatever reason we run out of numbers, then we may have to address that. But as far as I know, running out of numbers on the lower parts of Main Street, the lower parts of State Street, the lower parts of Langdon Street, I don't believe we have any numbering issues today. But it may be one I could ask Audra to see whether there are other communities that have these certain downtown exemptions. I don't think it's an issue from my perspective. It was also why we were going to leave them for last. If we didn't get to them, then it probably wasn't going to break the bank.
It's interesting to think about, well, let me back up. I appreciate Christine's thought there about if it comes to that, let's involve Montpelier Alive. I think that makes sense. But then I could also picture if the downtown that is exempted is coterminous with Montpelier Alive, whose mission is the downtown, then it's people beyond Montpelier Alive's scope potentially that might be affected. But anyway, that regardless.
There are certain pieces, certain ones that it will impact. Let me just go and throw out, just because it sticks in my head, Woodbelly Pizza.
Mm-hmm.
They are on Berry Street.
Right.
I know it's going to be difficult for them to get a new number. It's, they're going to have to make a number of changes, but at the same time, they're on a street that must be renumbered. So there are going to be places where we aren't going to have a choice. And we're going to have to work to minimize this, give them as much time and flexibility to make the adjustment. Other communities have done it. I'll just point out, we're one of the last places to not be E911 compliant. Other parts of the state have managed to survive getting through this process in the 90s and 2000s and 2010s. We just happen to be left in the 2020s as one of the last holdovers of the old systems. So I will be as flexible and work with people as much as we can. And yes, that's a very good idea to be talking to Montpelier Live as we start to roll out, especially places that have commercial impacts.
Yeah, thank you. Other thoughts? Okay, well, I'm going to close the public hearing, and we have a motion and a second for second reading. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 And opposed? Okay. All right, so that passes. Thank you, Mike. Thanks for getting us to this point where we're almost compliant, or we're getting there anyway.
Thank you very much.
Yep. All right. Okay, so we have a presentation from the from the community fund, and I believe that is also Christine. So if you're ready, I'll turn it over to you.
Super. Thank you. So thank you for having us back. Just wanted, before I launch into this agenda item, which should not be too involved, wanted to also just give a quick shout out to the Homelessness Task Force and just really acknowledge that that is a group of volunteers working against, ingrained systems that have been in place for a very long time, and an acute housing shortage, that is, all of which are factors that are so challenging. And anyway, I appreciated being able to hear their presentation and appreciate the City Council's support of that committee. And their work is so critical and so challenging. So I just wanted to thank everybody for that. So the reason that the Community Fund is back before you this evening is that we have another application to put in front of you. And so I wrote a memo that came from our full board that is in your packet. And here's the context for what happened. We went through our typical process where we solicited applications, we reviewed applications, we made recommendations for grants, and we brought them to you in January. You approved that slate of recommendations. Thank you so much for doing that. And those recommendations went on to be included in the city budget. As we all know, the budget passed. However, we just learned last month that there was a grant application that was left out of our group that we reviewed. And that application was for Down Street. And so I consulted with Bill Frazier about how to best handle that. And he encouraged our board to go ahead and review that application, make a recommendation, and bring it to you. And that is why we are here this evening. So our hope is to get this application from Down Street a fair shake, if you will, since they were left out of this first round. Down Street Housing and Community Development is an organization that I am sure you probably all know. So I don't want to tell you what you already know. I think you probably all know, especially given the Homelessness Task Force presentation, how acute the affordable housing crisis is in Montpelier. They are asking for a grant of $5,000. Last year, Down Street's services positively impacted 727 Montpelierites. So we are asking the City Council if for your grace and consideration in making a grant of $5,000 to Down Street to be added to the full slate of grants that the Community Fund Board recommended. I'll note our total this year was $130,150. Last year it was $133,250. If the Down Street application is funded, it's an increase of $1,900 over last year's total. So we're still very much in the same ballpark. So that is a summary of why we're here this evening. I will stop talking and look to see if you all have questions.
Can I just jump in?
Yes, please go ahead, Bill.
I just wanted to follow up with on Christine's comments that, you know, in years past, we've had situations where people, where agencies missed deadlines or something wasn't properly filled out or something like that, and the council's been asked to make an exception. In this case, the application was filled out in a timely fashion, completely. It went into the online portal and did not get transferred to the board, so they didn't see it. And so that's why I urged Christine. I said, you should really take a look at this and decide. You know, you can't go back and revisit the ones you've already approved, but would this or would this not have been approved? And they recommended it. Obviously, it's not the ideal way we'd like to do it, but it's also fair to Down Street, and it is an important grant, a function for the city. We obviously, the city will have to find the money. I mean, it's $5,000. It's not going to necessarily break us, although of course we're in budget mitigation anyway. But I recommend that we go forward with this because it's just fair.
And to be clear, this would be finding money from the FY22 budget that was
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Okay, Jack, go ahead.
I definitely want to do this. Do we have we identified a place where this money would come from yet?
We haven't yet. We're obviously watching the budget. We'll probably not make that identification till June 27th or something like that when we see how everything falls to the bottom.
Well, I move that we add.
And I note that I safely say that while I'm in Maine and Kelly is in Vermont, so she can't hit me.
Go ahead, Jack.
So I move that we make this appropriation for the to add it to the 2022 budget.
Second.
Okay. We got a motion and then a second. We got a couple seconds. All right. So, any further discussion on this? I agree. I think this is something that we can and should make happen. All right. Any further discussion?
If I could, I just wanted to point out that Michelle Kersey, the development director for Down Street, is in the Zoom as well. And clearly there's a ton of city council support for this. And so thank you so much for that. We're really grateful. But just wanted to point out that she is also here.
Actually, thank you, Christine. And I want to thank the council and the Montpelier Community Fund Committee for responding so quickly to this. We're really appreciative of the relationship that we have with the city of Montpelier and are grateful for your support. So thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Any further comments? Okay, there's been a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 And opposed? Okay, so the motion carries, and thank you again. Thanks everybody for recognizing this and yeah, pulling this together so that we can get this funding to Down Street. That's great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so just want to give ourselves a little bit of a time check. It is 8:17. We're planning anyway on having a hard stop at 8:30. So I think I'm planning on moving forward until then, and then we'll just see sort of where we're at 8:30. Okay, so actually, yeah, right. So we were going to move the third quarter financial update ahead of the pool presentation. So yeah, let's go to that, which is Kelly, I believe.
Good evening, everyone. Kelly Murphy, Finance Director. I'm going to share my screen here and just give an overview of where we're at. And then feel free to ask questions throughout or at the end. And we'll get started. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. So I'm just going to start with a brief overview of, what we started this plan on. Our projections were pretty rugged. We came in with a downgrade of about 9% over FY21's approved budget. And so I'm happy to report that things are less bad than we had projected. That being said, we also do have a really good plan in place. And so we are in good shape to weather the storm. I can go through the details here, but you can kind of see, where the buckets of money that, we were missing are. I will note that there are still a couple areas that we're watching pretty closely. One is property tax revenue, one is local options tax, and then the other is the parking fund revenue. Those are three areas that are not performing maybe as well as we would like. And so we'll continue to watch them. So this here is a listing of all the items that went into this plan. And in the next slide that I'm going to show you is a look at, what we're seeing to date with our revenue downgrade based on projections, knowing that we still have another quarter to go. So this could still change. And then also weighing that against what we're actually seeing in terms of what we're able to harvest. And so starting from the top, you can see that we've got the first sort of category, general fund taxes and fees. And so in that bucket of money, that is where property taxes are, the state and local pilot money, and then other state payments. The state payments we're going to receive, so that's positive. But the local options tax money is not coming in where we thought it would. So for the property taxes right now, for the current fiscal year in 21, it's looking at like about $200,000 down. That could change in the fourth quarter with people getting stimulus money and making up ground. So we'll see. And then with the local options tax, it's about $95,000 down. But then that netted against a higher state pilot payment. We're looking a little bit better there. And then we did get better than expected highway aid money. So then moving on to the next bucket, this one includes program user fees. So namely things and the senior center and recreation, they're just not, doing the programs that they were in the past. And then there are other areas here that include permits, licensing fees, and then some other fees for services. And so we're still seeing it down there. And then the parking fund, this is based on where we are currently and where, if we continue at this rate, we'll end up. And so the total down there at the bottom, our deficit mitigation plan initially was about 1.4. We're at about $800,000 right now. We'll see what happens in the fourth quarter. If, we end up, increasing that shortfall, or if it, comes in a little bit lower than we're anticipating here based on what we're seeing. And then in the next sort of section here where we've taken things down a bit, you can see the categories. We've got personnel, operating, and capital. And so we've been able to harvest quite a bit from personnel through vacancy savings or the furlough plan that we still had in place at the beginning of the fiscal year. Operating is a little bit of a different story in that we're watching things pretty closely. These things are moving. There have been, some things that are a little bit more expensive than we had anticipated based on the budget, like legal or advertising or postage. Also, the managed service contract that we have in place, we've really been using that quite a bit. And so there's some time and materials there that, we're working to right size. And then the capital piece here is the largest share of our plan. And I'm happy to report that we have saved that money. The difference between the plan and what we've actually sort of held aside to date is the power stretchers that we funded last year. So we're doing pretty well. Things included in that category for equipment, we delayed a police cruiser, DPW equipment, a sidewalk plow and a truck, cemetery a truck, delayed the ambulance, and then a recreation plow. And then on the side of projects, we delayed Cummings Street, Hubbard Street retaining wall, and then spot repairs on Berry and Loomis. And so as we get on here, we'll brief you on sort of what we would restore if we have funding at the end. You'll see on this slide that we're net positive right now based on these projections. And we may even, be a little bit better than that depending on how things fall. My recommendation for my memo would be to put that towards the unrestricted fund balance or to kick it over into projects that we didn't fund because we were constrained. So far, this is what we've received into the city's coffers for coronavirus relief funds, about $170,000. And, I'll get on with the next slide here where the city does stand to receive a lot more in federal funding. And I think we're positioned to pivot to really fully take advantage of this funding. And so the timeline from when the American Rescue Plan Act was passed back in March to when we have to spend the money, which is December 2024, gives you a sense of what we're working with. We're going to get just over $2 million. The first half of that is going to be transmitted by June 9th, so it's just over $1 million. And then the remaining funds within the year, which we heard from Congressman Welch, and incredibly thankful that we'll have the opportunity to benefit from this. And then based on what I've heard from the league and a couple other sources, this is what we could potentially use the funding for. I don't know if it's fortunate or not, but because we do have significant revenue loss and we can support that with what we're seeing in both 20 and 21, we lost somewhere between $1.2 and $1.5 million, depending on where things end up tracking. And so I think we can make the case for lost revenue related to the coronavirus. So then we can dump that back into restoring projects, which would be really great. And then there's also the other areas that, definitely would deserve some consideration. Such as, household, small businesses, nonprofits, premium pay, or investments in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. This also doesn't take into account funding that we may receive from the community survey that was done through the congressional delegation for an earmark. So if we do receive funding, it may go towards areas, the projects that we did put in for, were some infrastructure upgrades, some parks, recreation, cemetery, just to name a few areas that were part of that application process. And so just kind of wrapping it up here, I think keeping the deficit mitigation plan in place is the best way to go until we actually receive federal funding and also then get more guidance from the Treasury on how we can use that funding. I think, we're definitely in good shape in terms of being able to use it for lost revenue. But I think we should hold the line. So continue to spend on essential items only, replacing equipment and infrastructure only at point of failure, which we've had a few instances where we've had to make some repairs and we've been able to weather that okay. We are monitoring the parking fund very closely, just to make sure that, we can make ends meet at the end of the year. And then, the next step will be getting a list of projects together, which we already have, and reviewing it internally before presenting it to council for consideration for restoration. And so that's my presentation. And so we're doing okay. So I'll take questions if you have any.
Great, thank you. Great questions. So I'll just speak for myself here and say that I know you had put out a question there as to whether the net positive cash that we have as a result of our sort of holding the line now should be either put into basically reserve or into reserves, or should be dedicated to projects. And I'd be interested in other people's opinion about this, but my gut is to put that in the reserve fund, particularly until we see how much we can actually restore with the funding that we know is coming our way anyway. And then even after that, I just want to advocate that we should be to the extent that is reasonable, be trying to get back up to our reserve fund policy levels, which we are not at right now. And that's a hard thing to get to anyway, and it seems like a good opportunity to do that. But otherwise, seems like for a rugged projection initially, it's great that we're doing as well as we are. Other thoughts? Yeah, Jay, go ahead, and then Connor.
Just a quick question, Kelly, and you may have said this, and I'm sorry if I missed it, but do we have a sense of timeline on the earmarks that we heard about from Congressman Welch? Do we know when we're going to, I know that Cameron put together those proposals, so when will we learn about those?
So great question. I didn't mention that actually, so thanks for asking. So we think that we will hear Monday, and we'll know, what's happening pretty quickly. So more to come.
Great. Cameron, yeah.
Yeah, real quick, I just wanted, for sort of transparency, and I don't think we've actually listed those out for folks deliberately in this meeting, is we sort of put in applications for earmarked funds. We don't know if they will be supported by our delegation, but we put in quite a few requests, and they were in order of priority: East State Street, preliminary and final design; the State Street Sewer and CSO construction project; the Water Resource Recovery Phase 2 construction; renovations to our rec center; helping build out Confluence Park; creating 24/7 public access restrooms; and some building repairs to our cemetery.
Okay, I just want to interrupt ourselves here. Connor, I know you have a comment. Do you think you can hold your comment until after we take a quick break?
I think I can. Yeah.
Okay.
It'll be okay.
I also see that there are a couple folks that turned their videos on. Were you interested in making a comment on this particular topic? Nope. Okay.
No.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, that's coming up. But we're going to take a break here since it's 8:30. What do you think, team? 5 minutes, 10 minutes? Dan votes 10. Okay. Well, split the difference. No. All right. Let's go with Bill is voting here too. Let's go with a 10-minute break. And we'll see you back here at 8:40. That's like 9 minutes. Okay. All right. See you back soon. All right. So with it being 8:40, Connor, do you still remember your comment?
I do, yeah. Kelly, feel free to say you don't know because I know details are fuzzy, but do you know anything about like the premium pay for essential workers, like what that structure is? What would that encompass? Is it just first responders? It feels like everybody's essential who we've made work through the pandemic. So be eager for details when they come out, but
You and me both. I do not have details at this point, but hopefully, once the funding is transmitted, we will know.
all right. Thanks a million.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other questions? I don't think there's any motion that we need about this at this point. Is that correct? Right. Okay. Any other comments on the third quarter update? Okay. All right, great. Well, we are going to move on then. Thank you, Kelly. And so we are up to talking about the pool use this summer. And for this, I assume I'm turning it over to Arnie. Go ahead.
Thank you, everybody. We just wanted to chat about the pool and kind of get some assistance in the decision of whether or not we should open. I think Cameron's going to put up the PowerPoint presentation for me, so I don't have to fumble through that while I'm talking. Here we go. Awesome. So some of our challenges that we have, with the pool of course, typically every year is the timeline for reopening the pool. It takes, on a normal year, it takes approximately 30 to 35 days to prep the pool for opening. This requires draining the pool, then cleaning the pool. And last year, because it wasn't open, it could even take longer because of the debris that, could be in the pool from sitting over time. Then once we get the pool scraped, we repaint the pool, which generally takes a few days to a week. Filling the pool alone takes about a week. And then filtering the pool also takes about a week once we get the water filled. A lot of this too, when we're doing this work, we typically have at least 6 maintenance staff that are helping in the assistance of doing this, which is our 2 full-time maintenance staff that we usually have, plus 4 seasonals. Right now, we have 1 seasonal who's working for us, and that's it for seasonal staff and myself. Our 2 full-time folks retired. Maintenance staff retired this last December. They've kind of been put on hold for rehiring those positions. And then I just had my assistant program person who just resigned last week. So those are some challenges that we just have from our full-time staff situation. Pool impacts on public safety. Close contact in a pool is unavoidable. Folks certainly won't be wearing masks in the water. We have limited resources for the enhanced cleaning needs and high touch areas, bathrooms, changing areas, pool deck. Potential limited use regardless, pending state regulations. Last year during the pandemic, there was a limit on public gatherings. And this year, it just seems like it's going to be at least the same challenge, if possibly not more. The city understands that the pool is a valued and important public facility, but is very hesitant to begin an opening process during the highest COVID-19 cases in our area since the beginning of the pandemic. The timeline for opening needs to begin now by the end of April in order to be open by mid-June. This timeline is potentially going to take much longer As I just had said, as the work is going to be much more difficult with less staff and less trained staff to help as well. The other challenge we're going to be having is the availability of finding trainers to train our lifeguards. There's definitely a shortage of courses in the area, and the availability has been challenging just to find some of those. The tracking and tracing, I don't even know how our staff would be able to be enforcers of the state guidelines, nor do we have the capacity to enforce signing in. Ramifications to childcare, ability to, if the pool is open, it will impact the following: the availability of space for our day camp. The pool is actually our licensed childcare facility. That's what we've had always. Is it has to be a building that can get us inside from storms, cleanliness, safety of pool restrooms, which summer camp kids cannot share at this time with pool visitors. So last year when we had to set up the pool as our pod space, we actually had to separate the pool house in half because we couldn't even cross over the day camp kids that were in the same program with each other. And we also had to keep staff separate from the two groups. Sharply increase the risk of contamination. Pool closures due to COVID exposure could also possibly close our camp for the summer, which obviously many parents count on us for child supervision. Possible financial implications of opening the pool. I mean, the pool operates at a loss anyways. Typically, we budgeted $132,000 in expense, and we're looking at a 42% recovery if everything was perfect with our revenue expectations. Revenue implications could even be worse, though, if the state guidelines limit gathering sizes throughout most of the summer. The city would also probably need additional staff and resources to operate safely with the additional cleaning and also smaller sized supervision, like in our childcare program, for example. Operation costs still continue during COVID closure. So if the pool ended up having to close for some reason, as long as there's a thought of the possibility of the pool opening again, you'd have to continue filtering and chlorinating the pool, as you just can't let it go unchlorinated because within a week, it'll start to turn green. So those are some costs, and including the electricity that wasn't mentioned there, to run the pumps to make sure the filters and everything continue to filter the pool as it's being maintained with the cleanliness. So the staff recommendation is to not open the pool for, I skipped a page here, sorry. Financial implications of opening the pool continued. Risk of intermittent job loss, setting up seasonal employees for jobs, and then all of a sudden, if we had to close, that could cause a hardship on some folks that might have got employed someplace else. Loss of resources of rec department. I've already mentioned this. We're down to basically one full-time person who's going to be involved with all the outdoor maintenance oversight, which is myself, plus the pool day camps and other programs that we're running, as well as all our facilities. So our recommendation is, for the concern of public safety, we're just not feeling like, with some of the COVID numbers starting to shoot up again. I was looking at some information where last April we were around 18 people per day, and they were shutting things down. And this year we're averaging almost 162 people a day in April, and we're looking at opening some different areas. So it's kind of a contrast of what I'm concerned about, is whether we can keep our public and our community safe
with what's going on. I mean, there's nothing I'd love to see more than to have our pool open again, because in my almost 30 years here, this would be the only second time that we haven't opened it. But at the hard part is how can we make sure that it's done safely so we don't become the next public outbreak for COVID. And that's pretty much most of the presentation. Everybody got the cover sheet that we sent for the presentation, which has a little bit more depth on some of the information. But Cameron, do you have anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would like to. I just want to sort of reiterate what Arnie said about how important the pool is and how much the city acknowledges that it's such an important resource to families in the summer. And, Arnie was saying it's only the second time that this would be closed if our recommendation is taken in his history here. And I can say, like, I moved here in October 2019. I've never seen it open. And I would like to swim in the pool, is what I'll say there. But if we look at the cases, and right now the state has really shown data that the cases are up in young adults who are not able to be vaccinated. And that is not going to change by July 4th when the governor wants to move things to be more open. And also the risk for our childcare operations is huge. A good percentage of our working families rely on our affordable childcare options during the summer to be able to go to work and continue their schedule. And if we do open the pool, like Arnie said, we're really going to have to limit what is even open. What does that even mean? Because our children the children in our day camps are honestly going to come first there because it's a licensed space. They need those restrooms. So folks, if we do open the pool, we'll need to use porta-johns throughout the summer. And there's some other implications there, but like those summer camps, if those have to close, that takes out childcare for all of the folks that come to those camps. And that's hundreds of kids. So that's really important for me. And I think that's really important for our community to know as well. I also want to mention that we do have a lot of activities around the city for parks and recreation that are not the pool, that are open for families and open for kids if you're looking for other options. And we would love to go into that if people would like to hear it. We did include in this presentation alternatives to opening the pool. If we do not open the pool, we do have funding in the budget. There are tons of deferred maintenance work that we could be doing with that funding. Again, we only have 2 staff right now in our entire rec department functionally. And so that deferred maintenance could go a long way into making this an easier process for opening next year. It's also we don't recommend this, but if council wanted to go this direction, there is a hybrid opening model, extending pool hours for when camp isn't present. It will vastly increase the costs, but it's something that we could look into. Bring that back to y'all as a model to open if that's something you'd like to look into. And then recognizing that the pool itself could be opened as a pod area for summer camp. Again, that really would raise our costs. We wouldn't make any of that revenue back. So we tried to present some options, and we are trying to make a recommendation that balances our community's needs for childcare and our understanding of the safety risks of opening a pool, while acknowledging that it is the worst. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So I want to make sure that we prioritize the public here. So before we go to the public, are there any just clarifying questions that the council has? Connor, go ahead.
Yeah, just on the financial piece, have we looked into this Summer Matters program, which I guess dumps about $71 million into Vermont for this type of stuff? It's I have visions of Arnie like netting out like leaves and then running across town to do something else. That doesn't seem like feasible. But could that potentially cover another seasonal staffer or something?
My answer for that is again, it's one of those we'll see when it comes to us what it's eligible for. We have gotten quite a few grants from the state, but they're focused on child care and programming versus people. So we'll see. I think that's a good response to that.
Other specifically clarifying questions? Lauren, go ahead.
Yeah, just on the staffing issue, just to better understand. So it sounds like some people have left and some retirements. Like, what's the plan for hiring back, and what's the timeline? Just to understand, it sounds like this moment there's a real pinch, but where do you expect to get over the next month or two?
Right now, we're in the process of trying to hire one full-time maintenance position back, because that would certainly benefit me probably more than rehiring my assistant programming person, because I can't be all over doing maintenance projects and also trying to run administrative type stuff. So we're looking at hiring that one right away. The other, originally, I believe the maintenance, those positions were going to be deferred until, was it 22 or 23 possibly, if we didn't recover Cameron with
22
COVID.
right now.
22.
Mm-hmm.
So that was going to be put on hold for a little bit, unless, things turn around and our programming bounces back, then we would bring people back sooner.
We are also getting help from the Parks Department, who've graciously added rec support into their schedules.
Dan.
Has the rec advisory board weighed in on this at all, or given any review of this?
They actually have, and they were in support of closing the pool for this year and using that time and some of the dedicated monies for doing some of the maintenance projects that we're talking about, that a lot of times you really can't get done because they're in the off season, or it's during the season when the pool is running. But there are a number of projects, like the pool deck needs to be redone, resealed, the cracks filled, and that's obviously a warmer weather project. so it's really it's a challenge to do some of those types of projects when the weather's not right. But they were in support because they too have concerns. And one of our rec board members is normally a daily user of the pool. They were there every day with their childcare, and she was in support of doing this. She doesn't like the idea. She hates the idea of the pool closing, but she also understands that for the safety of the community, it almost makes the most sense. So they were in favor of the deferred maintenance ideas.
And a second clarifying question, if I may. When you talk about the alternatives, it sounds as if none of those have really been sort of developed or thought through. You're saying if we want to go down that road, you'd come back with those alternatives, right?
Yes,
Cameron.
I didn't know if Cameron was going to answer that.
Okay, just to be clear, you're saying don't open it. In the alternative, there are things to repairs to make, but if the council decides to open it, it would be best to go back and come up with some alternative plans.
We would try to figure out the safest way to make that possible and still keep our child care program separate from the public.
Okay, thanks.
Any other clarifying questions? Okay, so we're going to go to the public. Samara Mays, I see you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, hi. I am a Montpelier resident and also a child care provider, and I happen to serve on an advisory group, COVID advisory group for child care programs. of which Brina Holmes, the Director of Child and Maternal Health, is a part of. We actually met this evening to discuss new guidelines coming out. And I think it's important to mention that a lot of these safety assumptions that are being mentioned are not consistent with the current information and current guidelines that are being put forth by the Department of Health and the Department of Child and Maternal, the Director of Child and Maternal Health. Specifically, it's been made clear to us that we can expect that enhanced cleaning and sanitizing will no longer be expected after July 4th. The research has shown that this is absolutely not necessary and is not required for safety. Pods are to be discontinued. And again, Dr. Holmes commented that it has been shown that the pod system is not necessary to keep children safe. And I think one thing that I learned this evening from my previous meeting was that when looking at what we're going to be doing in June and July, we have to have a full understanding of where the state is going to be in July versus where we are now. The Vermont Forward Plan is based on projections with current vaccination rates and herd immunity. And I want to make sure that any decisions that are being made about the use of the pool, especially where childcare and safety are being considered, that we're actually using the most up-to-date and accurate information, because I believe a lot of this to be outdated at this point.
Okay. Thank you. Morgan, I see you've got your hand raised. Go ahead. Just checking in. Morgan, did you want to weigh in on this?
Yes. Sorry, I had myself muted. Thank you for your patience. I wanted to say my apologies for forgetting to introduce myself earlier when speaking about the Homelessness Task Force. Morgan Brown, resident of District 3 in Montpelier. I'm no expert, and I just read and watch what I get in the news and all that, so I might not be fully informed. However, my opinion concerning the pool in general is this. Pertaining to the pool, for what it may be worth, my initial reaction is, due to the high potential of spread of COVID-19 and also liability to the municipality, I would suggest that it would be unwise to open the facility. My opinion is that opening the pool would potentially be an invitation to disaster, including due to COVID-19 spreading among youth these days. My question would be, what would Dr. Anthony Fauci recommend? And if I butchered his last name, I apologize. So that's my question. What would he recommend? And I think you should go by the guidance of experts like him. Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. And I see we've got a few other folks who have raised their hands. Lauren Hibbert, Kathleen Bryant, and Jason Woodard. And we'll go right in that order. So go ahead, Lauren. Except that we can't hear you. You do look like you're unmuted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, great. My name is Lauren Hibbert. I'm a resident in District 3, and I have some avid swimmer kids. So I'm here to advocate that the pool open. I would ask the city whether you've talked to the sister cities of Barrie and Waterbury, both of which are planning to open their pools. They also probably have similar safety concerns and financial concerns. So I would really ask whether you've inquired with them what their planning is. I understand the concern about the camp. I do think that guidelines are quickly shifting as we're moving forward, and I would really encourage the city to look into that Summer First funds. It's a large pot of money. The governor's very invested in Vermont kids having a good summer. I think for most Montpelier kids, that includes the public pool. Montpelier prides itself on being a family-friendly place. The pool is crucial to that. It's very sad to think about it not opening. And the other piece is if the city chooses to not open the pool, I would really encourage the city to not just do maintenance, but to do substantial work. I had the great blessing to grow up in Montpelier. I was in middle school at that pool. It is exactly the same. And I'm almost 44 years old. So there needs to be substantial improvements. And if it's going to close, there should be an investment of capital, time, and energy to make that pool the next generation's pool. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lauren. Kathleen.
Hi there. Hi, I'm Kathleen Bryant. I'm also a resident and have been really involved with the pool with my kids over the years and been part of the planning for the summer swim team. And I just want to speak to how I think swim lessons are vital for safety for the kids in our community, and that another summer of missing out on swim lessons is going to be potentially a real safety issue. And I totally agree with Samara that these guidelines are changing really fast and that there's really good evidence that there's not as much spread of COVID outside. I'm also a nurse practitioner and do a lot of public health work as well. So I'm up to date on a lot of the state guidelines and feel like it's a very minimally risky place at the pool, and that swimming itself is a very safe activity that's done really safely all winter long inside. And if we could do it outside, I think that it would be even safer. And when I heard there was some talk about lack of access to lifeguard trainings, I have teenagers and I know that there's been a lot of lifeguard trainings around the state. UVAC has trainings almost once a month for lifeguards. There's also one up in Burlington, and there's one over at the pool in Randolph. So I know there has been good lifeguard training options. I think the longer we wait to decide to open the pool, the more you're going to lose this opportunity to get teenagers to work. And I know that a lot of teenagers have been looking for jobs, and this would be a great opportunity for teenagers to stay busy and get jobs this summer too. It was a real missed chance last summer for a lot of kids to work in our community. And I think that all these funds that are coming from our federal government and from Bernie, I think are really worth looking into. And I know there's a lot of push to keep kids busy and keep them safe this summer. And I feel like the pool is a perfect opportunity to do that. I definitely understand it's going to be a lot of work to make it happen, but I think that there's a lot of funds available. And I think we need to think about safety in a different way. We need to think about safety in terms of how we keep our kids safe for swimming for the future. So I just feel passionately that I really want to see that pool open. And I'm also wondering about, I know last summer we were told the pool was going to close and that there'd be maintenance done on the pool last summer, but I'm not sure that there was that. And I'm curious if there was some maintenance because I live right next to the pool and didn't see much happening. So I'm just kind of curious if that really will happen this summer if the pool closes, because I'm not sure that it did happen last summer. So those are just some of my comments. Thanks.
Thank you. Jason and then Megan Canella.
Hi, I'm Jason Willard. I'm a Montpelier resident, parent of two daughters who learned how to swim there and dive for the first time. And I was the coach of the Montpelier Marlins in 2019 before closure. So I know personally, being a coach, it's a tough pill to swallow, knowing those kids don't have that chance to participate in something that was so good for them in terms of healthy exercise, to be able to challenge themselves and just sort of miss out on that team camaraderie. So question I had a little bit piggybacked on Lauren's about, is this in line with what other communities are doing? And if not, what makes our situation unique that we cannot make those adjustments and accommodations? And I think just reiterating, I mean, the key thing about this pool is its accessibility, whether it's for work, for kids that can walk, can bike to that pool. I mean, it is a big focal point. And we can talk about other opportunities in the summer, but there's nothing comparable to this in terms of being in or by the water in this area. And that accessibility is just it's hard to replicate. So I think that would be a huge loss. Thank you.
Thank you. Megan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Megan Canella, and I have a mailing address of Montpelier, but I'm actually an East Montpelier resident. I have 3 kids who are avid swimmers who participated in the summer swim team in 2019, and it was probably the best summer we've had ever. The summer swim team is magical and wonderful, and life without it will stink and will send us to Waterbury to swim. But there's no need to do that because we have a pool right down the road. I also just want to speak to the fact that my kids have been swimming indoors all summer in a program that has, Pete can speak to it more, but I think we had 75 swimmers participate. Again, this was indoors. Jason was coaching. It was never shut down due to a positive case or to any contact tracing. The program was run in an excellent fashion, and it can be done. It can be safely done, and I would love to see Montpelier give it a go.
Great, thank you. Other folks, yes, Peter, yes, yeah, and then I see you, Sophie. So we'll go Peter, then Sophie.
Thanks. Just 3 quick points. A lot of reiterating what was already said. First, that it's important to think of swimming as a lifeline for a lot of the kids in our community. As a Montpelier resident, having kids who swim, who know kids who swim. This is as important as having a soccer field open or a tennis court. Swimming is what they do. It should be treated equally. Second, as a couple of folks have mentioned, I'm on the board for the Central Vermont Swim Club. We have 70 plus swimmers strong in this area. We worked really, really hard when we got noticed that we couldn't swim at the university at Norwich because of COVID. We worked and figured out a plan to move to Green Mountain Community Fitness. We spent a lot of time going through our procedures on how we were going to run a program indoors. We did. And as Megan mentioned, and mostly to our coaches like Jason and others, we were able to get through an entire season. We're still swimming as a team right now inside, but that's, as we move forward, summer swim program through the Vermont Swimming Association is very important. We had word that UVAC will be hosting a summer championship for all Vermonters. If we don't have a pool to swim in, there won't be that opportunity for competition for our kids again. They missed out last year. And third, just to go about as far as funding concerns, I know also, I think Councilman Casey brought up the Summer Matters program from Governor Scott's. I know that expressly in that program, there is funding for teen employment for summer. So this is exactly the pool space is exactly what Summer Matters is all about. It would just be really unfortunate that we are focusing on April 14th of what it looks like instead of, July 1st, and June 30th is what we'll be looking at then. So I think it'll be a lot lost if we don't kind of get together and kind of figure out a way to open up our pool for the summer. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Sophie.
Thanks. I don't want to repeat what everybody else has been saying, but I do also have 2 avid swimmers, and I'm also an avid swimmer and would love to see the pool open this summer. I think I echo what several have said in terms of accessibility. Not everybody has the opportunity to get in a car and drive to a lake or a river to cool down this summer. I think that's a great point, and it should be taken seriously. And I think of the kids who are going to the summer camp and being out there exposed to the sun all day, and that this is also a place for them to refresh themselves during that day in the heat of the summer. and that it would be a really lost opportunity for them to continue life-saving skills and swimming skills there as part of that daily camp routine. But I would also ask the council to, in evaluating any of the alternatives in terms of the hybrid or the renovation plans, just to I'd like to understand what is already ready to go in terms of projects. Because working for Burlington Parks, I know the effort that takes to kind of ramp everything up, and we're already in mid-April. So is there really a feasibility of repairing or having major changes to the pool, which is desperately needed? I definitely echo that sentiment to be able to evaluate the options that were presented tonight. I feel like we really need a picture to see what will happen if the pool is closed, which I don't advocate for, but clarity on that would be really appreciated. And also just numbers in terms of, I understand that there'll be losses if we have to reduce the numbers of people who attend or are able to be admitted to the pool for safety reasons, but what are those gaps and what do they compare to previous years, and then of course to the projects that could be implemented this summer. But overall, my voice is to advocate for the pool opening, and also saying that looking at sister cities is great in terms of the scale, but looking even to Burlington in terms of a larger scale and having to deal with a larger population and how that's going to be addressed overall in parks and programming and camps. I think there's great examples out there of what was done last summer in a much more restrictive COVID situation that could be implemented here if we're still thinking there's going to be a larger risk, but to do it in a safe manner. But I understand it's a hard decision, but I think overall the city benefits on so many levels from the pool being open, and I hope you'll hear us. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Cameron, I see you've got your hand up.
Yeah, Mayor, I didn't know if you would like me to respond to any of those. I would certainly like Arnie to talk about the projects that we are ready to undertake at the pool. But so I just didn't know if you would like me to respond to anything.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. First off, I just want to thank everyone for their comments. A lot of that is definitely heard. I think, especially with the specific guidance, a lot of the child cares, and I can't speak to that very intelligently. I'll have to turn that over to Arnie, but we get our own guidance, especially for rec departments, and the pool is a little separate than that. And a lot of the planning that we have to do now, while we're assuming differences in July and August specifically, when we start opening that pool, it's one of those things that we throw that money into now, and we have to plan for the now as well. So that pool opens in June, which isn't after, like there is some different changes, but that opens in June. So that process is a lot different. And I also sort of wanted to talk about Waterbury and Barry, and I know they have pools. That we are a sort of special agency because the pool area is our licensed childcare area, and that's different. That's not how the other organizations operate. Those other pools operate. So that sort of is a special consideration that we need to give the pool area. So that is something that we need to really keep in mind moving this decision forward. Also, I did want to sort of note the state's demographics that they just put out about children and COVID. Kids age 10 to 19 right now are the second most affected group in the state, with children representing over 21% of the entire state's cases. And that's deeply concerning to us. And I really do respect the idea about using sort of that summer first funding, and we'll definitely look into that. That's definitely something it's been on our radar. It's definitely something we'll look into further about hiring young folks. But I did also want to sort of acknowledge the fact that, again, we don't have the resources, and some of the reasons work didn't get done, or you didn't see work getting done last year, is because we were in the middle of a COVID recession. We didn't have funding coming in at all. And so these things, a lot of our projects had to go on halt. Most of our staff went on furlough. So we didn't have anything available to do that work last year. So this year is different. We do have some projects that can be easily underway. I'm going to sort of turn it to Arnie to sort of talk about what we could sort of immediately start taking care of.
Some of the projects that we wanted to take care of is there's an underground water pipe that goes from our pump house into our balance tank, and that's been last year at the end of the season during the end of the season. One of my maintenance guys discovered that there was some issues with some air leakage coming through in there somewhere. So that's one of the things that we need to kind of dig up and replace that whole line so we don't have breaks in it. The other is the pool deck. That pool deck is way overdue from having the cracks filled and sealed, because if folks who've walked on that know there's a lot of bumps and stuff and cracks in there. The cracks need to be filled, and the whole deck needs to be completely sealed with an asphalt sealer. The pool docks do need some work. There was some cement repairs that we had done, that my staff had done a couple years ago, but some of those are starting to be in need of being fixed again. Some of the corners are cracking on the rafts. The ADA rails need some base work. They do work still, but they are a little bit looser than they should be, and we need to have the inserts worked on that are underwater typically. Resurfacing parts of the floor inside the building itself there's some areas that there's needs some cement resurfacing, and that would probably require a little bit of a mason professional or an a cement company, somebody who works with concrete, to fix some of those, to have that done properly. Also, another thing that needs to be done on the ADA report that we've got on areas that we need to work on around our facilities is an actual access route to the pool deck from the pool house. Our areas, the two walkways we have right now are too steep. The percent of grade is too steep, so a new walkway needs to be put in for that. Painting the exterior of the pool building, that's something that we've been working on it bits and pieces, but sometimes it's nice to just have the whole thing done at once so the paint's all the same color. And then there's some other ADA projects that need to be done that were in the ADA report that the city received from the company that listed all the ADA projects that we need to work on. So, but I do like the idea of the Summer Matters grant, and I'm happy to look into that and see what we can find. We've been fortunate. We've gotten, I think, 3 childcare grants that we've worked on, 2 recently, one at the end of last summer. So we have been actively working into grants that we can get, and we've had some good success.
Okay, thank you. I just want to check in with the public. Anyone else want to weigh in on this that hasn't yet? Okay. All right, so thoughts from council. I may jump in first here and just say that I have a lot to say about this. So I guess the first thing is that, I recognize that, there's reduced staff, that there's some difficulty with the childcare setup. But I would really like to figure out a way to make this happen somehow for our community. Maybe that's this hybrid model with extended hours. It also occurs to me that, so maybe we can't get it ready to go for June 14th, right? That's too soon. What is the possibility that we could open it later in the summer, just to say that, we're working on it, right? Another thing that occurs to me is that if money is an issue here, right, that we anticipate losses basically from running the pool, what is the opportunity to, I mean, I think there's demand for the use of the pool. So, what can we be doing on the revenue side for asking people to like either increasing the rate or just changing how that's done. So it also seems like I would love to dig into this a little more to see like what would it take, how would it look to get this to happen. And I kind of also wonder if there is additional maintenance that's required because the pool wasn't open last year. Does that qualify for some kind of COVID related funds, because those are effectively some kind of like COVID expenses. So anyway, those are my thoughts. Other counselors. Connor.
Yeah, I was talking to my friend who's a like 5th grade teacher last night, and about this issue, and she was saying, look, the pandemic has really brought to light sort of the disparity between the kids who, have engaged parents and those who she sees sort of on the Zoom monitor, just, sort of leaving the kid to themselves there. And she was saying, a public pool is such an important thing just in the everyday life of a kid who can walk to it, like some people said, who don't have those parents who can drive them to like a swimming spot or something. So I'd really like to see it happen too. I think with the health stuff, we have to be consistent. It's not to get too graphic, but if you play a varsity basketball game, you've got the sweat of 10 other people on you at the end of the game there. And we let that go, right? I think there's ways we can make it safe, even if it limits the number of people in the pool or limits the hours of it a bit. So, I think if like 2 weeks from now, it comes back and the financials don't work and we just can't make it work, I'd be willing to vote against opening the pool, but I think we need to exhaust every possible, resource in doing this. And, that summer grant thing, again, $71 million. If it doesn't pay for this, what is it paying for? So just maybe having a chat with the Agency of Education, seeing what's on the table, looking at some different like staffing ratios here, and see what we can do. I'd like to have that discussion maybe in a couple of weeks when we come back here.
Dan, and then Lauren, and then Jay.
I'll vocalize this perhaps a little bit stronger than the counselors have. I don't see this as an option to not open the pool after a year of it not being open. This is simply too important of a resource. And I'm a little disappointed at the sort of capitulation that I think this presentation represents. And, I understand there are concerns and I understand there are restrictions, but this is one of, I think, the premier assets of our city, and to have it not used for all the reasons people have articulated. It's a matter of safety in teaching the children how to swim. It's a matter of exercise and engagement. It really is the only resource of its kind in this area. And so, I understand to a certain extent that the rec department is at a point where it really doesn't have the staff to do this from a logistical point of view. And so I guess I would soften a little bit towards what Connor is saying, but I don't think we're anywhere close to coming to that point. We haven't done the due diligence that's necessary to get to that point of saying, well, we shouldn't do this. I think we have to look to see what we can do. And I would say that if we do not open the pool this summer because of those financial or logistical resources, then we've got to have a plan in place that's more than just a laundry list of a couple items that we think we could do. It has to be a plan where this money is going to go to invest to make this pool better, and that we have a plan to open the pool for longer next summer. I really am disappointed because I think this is an incredibly important piece of this city, and I really don't appreciate the way it's being sort of pushed aside.
Okay. Lauren.
Yeah, thanks. I think I've gotten more emails on this than anything else since I've been on city council. So you can see the breadth and you can feel the passion from all of the people here tonight and a lot of the outreach. And I was getting lobbied at dinner by my 10 and 7-year-old to open the pool. So feeling it on the home front too. Yeah, I mean, I guess like I hear loud and clear the concerns with staffing. I do think the funding issues, it seems like there's a lot to explore. So I hope we could find ways to address that shortfall, or it might be the kind of thing where we're willing to take some loss this year, knowing that we, have worked really hard to keep be in the financial position that Kelly presented a little while ago, and just the safety issues with the swimming lessons, the just sheer joy that so many people are like, we've been such a hard year, and like taking this away seems like it's just a really hard thing for the community to even fathom. One constituent was wondering about the opportunity of partnering with a school system, if there's any staffing support or funding that they might have through some of their summer programming. So I don't know if that's been explored at all, but maybe there's opportunities to get some help and support from some of their people. I have no idea if or how we could work that out, but I thought that was worth raising. I mean, it does sound like a lot of other cities are doing this, and even with some of the people here tonight, like, what can we learn? So, knowing that we are short staffed, how much can we, for like, you were talking about like the difficulty of getting a contact tracing program and all of that. It sounds like a lot of other entities have figured this out. So, what can we learn from community members, from like, what are the other pools doing? And, even if they don't have some different challenges because of the child care, which I appreciate Cameron emphasizing that is an essential service for community members. So we definitely don't want to jeopardize that in any way. But I think, we could look at, what's happening. We're certainly not the only people trying to figure this out. So yeah, I guess I'm just at a similar place of like, would love to look at every possible turn over every rock and try to find funding options, ways we could staff this up, ways we could make it work, and try to overcome these challenges. And I would hope, like, if we do end up in the position of where we just really can't make it work, I agree. I would love to think about, is there a bigger overhaul? Like, it's such an unusual time that you would have it closed for the summer season. So like that to the maintenance, like more than just get it to status quo. Is there more? I know we've talked about that before, of the pool house and other things, some bigger projects that we could think about, and thinking about things like swim lessons. Like, can we be making them accessible somewhere else? Are there partnerships we could do with a private pool? Are there other things that we could think about to make swimming accessible, which doesn't meet all of the things we've talked about of kids being able to walk over to the community pool? But I think there's probably some other options we could think about to get as much swimming access as possible for our community. So that's where my head's at. Thanks.
Jay.
Sorry. I don't want to be redundant with other folks are saying, but I do agree that what we, our path forward needs to be is to try to figure out a way to open the pool in whatever capacity is possible, because of the community, the value that it carries to the community. I think our biggest challenge, we can talk about funding sources all we want on April 14th, but the challenge to Arnie and Cameron is to take those funding sources and turn them into people doing work on the pool to get it ready for this season. And that's my concern, because I think that there's opportunities for funding, but how can we get it ready, and just manage it so that it's accessible to folks. I think that the safety concerns are, like we heard from constituents tonight, are can be overcome around the virus and being, managing the space in a safe way. But the bottom line for me is that we need to figure out a way to make this asset, which is so important to our community, available to them for all the reasons we've talked about. A lot of the things that Arnie talked about in terms of maintenance that could be done in a lot of ways are cosmetic and don't necessarily, I think there's a lot of folks who would just assume live with cracks in the pool deck, but be able to swim this summer, and talk about a long-term plan to be able to fix those things down the road. My thinking is, and I know there's a lot of considerations here, logistic and financial, but I think our goal should be to solve this problem and to be able to open it, and not just to defer and write it off as a summer of maintenance. Thanks.
Jack, go ahead.
I think we're in a very difficult position here, and I do not think that we're looking at a rec department or a city administration that is not taking seriously the value of this resource to the community. I think people like Arnie, who's been running the rec department for many years, and the entire administration know the great value of the shared experience that the pool provides to many people in the community. I think we're also in a very tough position, though, and we knew we were in a tough position when we constructed a budget that involved not filling all the positions that were expected to be vacant, because we knew we were looking at a really tough budget year. And so we create a budget, the voters pass it, we expect the administration to manage to that budget. And this is the kind of thing that these are the consequences of those decisions. We know, or we think, that there's a possibility that the budget picture isn't going to be the same as we thought it was when we made the budget. And I think there's real value to seeing what money we can come up with to open the pool. I think that the health concerns can be addressed. The Centers for Disease Control have issued guidance on how to do public pools. It's an outdoor pool, but there's guidance that can be followed. And I think that we can meet the health needs. I think the real question to me is whether we can meet the budgetary needs. And so I would think we should, our charge to staff should be to come back to us, to try to do that and come back to us with a plan, or a report that it's not possible.
Thank you. Bill, I see you got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. I just want to, appreciate everyone's comments, and we hear you loud and clear. I just want to, give a little backing to Cameron and Arnie here. We do certainly understand the value of the pool. We did not sort of approach this dismissively. We are dealing with the resources that we have. We understand that guidelines may change, but they haven't yet. We've been consistent in following state guidelines in every program and project we've done. That was the policy we adopted at the beginning. And it's our job to bring these to you, these concerns. This is a big issue. It's your job to make the decision for the community that you think is best, knowing the concerns and the restraints. So, but I do want to stick up for my folks. This was not taken lightly at all. We all understood the pushback we would get recommending that we don't open the pool. And it was based purely on safety reasons and purely on financial challenges. Having heard what you've said, obviously, I think the plan would be to come back to the next meeting with a draft reopening plan and looking at costs and how it would work, and seeing if that is if doing that, then you can balance the pros and cons of that and make that decision. But it's clear that the sentiment exists to open the pool, and that's great. It is a fabulous community resource, and you folks get elected to weigh these concerns. So we and it's our job to lay those concerns out for you. So I hope you appreciate the spirit in which I was presented. And thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. I also just want to circle back to the concern that was raised about reducing the capacity for childcare, because that is also a concern that I share. That is a stated goal of our council, right? That we want to support childcare, or really increase the capacity that the city has for childcare offerings. And so the fact that, I will confess that it was leading up to this meeting, it was a little murky to me how opening the pool was going to reduce the capacity for childcare. But I think I feel clearer about it now that it's our designated childcare facility. So in light of that, I mean, I do recall from the materials, that there's some ways to mitigate that, having porta potties or whatnot. And so, in thinking about, coming back to the council next time with a draft, that's also in my mind, like what options are there for the childcare program, and with whatever choices that we have before us, how does that impact the childcare capacity and programming? So, just want to make sure that I emphasize that's important to me as well, because that feels like that's a trade-off. Other thoughts? Okay, thank you.
We'll be back at your next meeting to discuss opening plans, and Anne, I definitely hear you on the focusing on how each of those opening plans will impact the childcare program.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you. All right, I don't think we need a vote on this at this point, but I think it's pretty clear, at least the general direction we'd like to go, and we'll see what you all come back with. Thank you for all of your work on this and dealing with this really tough situation. We appreciate it, though. All right. Okay, so we are up to the garage and hotel project update. We have a potential executive session along with this as well, but I think for this, I'm turning it over to Bill.
Just briefly, this was originally intended to be a full update on where we were with the project, the legal status, the financial status, the design status, all those sorts of things. Obviously, we've received some news in the last week or so that has altered this somewhat. And I did present in the bridge articles the legal status. I don't know that we need to go through all of that. That was pretty detailed. But certainly happy to answer any questions that we can. Like, as I said, we were going to have our legal team and our design team and all our consultants on, and we didn't feel the need to do that. We do have some information about the finances, I think. And again, I'm a little bit out of the loop. I think we have a little presentation to make. Is that right? Okay. And happy to answer any questions. And then I think we should have a brief executive session to talk about at least the legal status of things, our legal strategy going forward.
Okay.
Okay. Who is doing this? Is it Cameron or Kelly, or is somebody muted?
So I'm muted and I'm here and I'm happy to present this. Sorry guys about that. So anyway, Kelly Murphy, Finance Director. Only one slide. We're not going to get too far into the details here, but this is an extract from what we've spent so far on the garage related items associated with the TIF district. And so you can kind of see what that looks like and what the categories are. It's just over $1 million. And then on the bottom here, there's just a little tally that just shows what's garage related and what's appeal related within that total figure there. So we can go through the details here, and we can even talk a little bit more about, even some of the development costs that are not captured here. But as you can see, we've got what's spent to date in that first column, just over $1 million. And then we've got what would be remaining on the project and sort of these design phases and where that would bring us if we were to move forward. And so we wanted to present this financial picture so that we could kind of show what's been spent to date. Stephanie, Clark, and I have been through this a couple times, just scrubbing the numbers a little bit to make sure that we've accurately captured the details. And so we can take questions on this. I can go line by line. If you want more detail, I can provide it. But we thought for tonight's presentation, we would keep it pretty high level and kind of give you a snapshot of, where we're at.
And I think just the main purpose for that was, we put out the number, actually we'd estimated 1.2, and it's a little bit lower than that. But just in the public conversation, it becomes 1.2 on legal fees and all of this, and be clear that that is not all on legal fees, and that the cost related to the appeals themselves was about $350,000, about $720,000 on sort of project development. Now, again, if we don't go forward, this is still money we're going to have to pay from. We won't be getting revenue and TIF revenue. So at the end of the day, to the taxpayer, it's all the same hit. But at least making clear and transparent where everything sort of was spent and why and what for, and how much was spent on different, the appeal versus the project as a whole.
Yeah, and just to add on there, Bill, a little bit, this does not capture the district formation costs. So there is a little bit more associated with TIF that's not specific per se to the garage project. But I think given what's on the table right now, this is the latest update on where we're at.
Okay. Questions. I can't see you all, so if you have a question or comment. Oh, okay. Right. Questions or comments from council, and then we'll see if folks from the public want to weigh in. Okay. All right. Any comments on this from the public? Okay. Well, thank you, Kelly. Thanks for this update and having these scrubbed numbers. It's good to know sort of how it breaks down, so we can be really clear about what our costs were, particularly as a result of the appeals.
Yeah, and also just to add in really quickly, what's nice about this is that we can tick and tie this all the way back to the invoice level of detail. And so that'll be nice when it comes time for an audit. Either way, we would have had to do this. So I'm thankful to be doing it now, so that then we can kind of, have all of the documentation at the ready for whatever's next.
Fair enough. All right, any other comments, questions, thoughts? Jack, go ahead.
Is this the appropriate time to make a motion to go into executive session?
I think so, unless there's anyone else who would like to speak. I just want to give another little pause here in case anyone else wants to weigh in.
And just
Go ahead, Dan.
just to clarify, the purpose of executive session would be to discuss ongoing litigation matters in which premature discovery would be prejudicial to one or more parties. Right?
Yes. Okay, I move.
Okay.
Oh.
No, you're good. Sorry.
Lauren had her hand up.
It's appropriate for me to say something. I just wanted to say thank you for all that the City Council's done on this project. I really appreciate it as a citizen of Montpelier.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren.
Okay, so I move that we make a finding that premature general public knowledge would clearly place the body at a substantial disadvantage regarding pending civil litigation to which the city is a party.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, so that passes. And Jack, go ahead.
And based on the finding we just made, I move that we go into executive session.
Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, okay, there was a second. Multiple seconds. Okay. All right, further discussion. Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 And opposed. Okay, and just to clarify, I don't. Oh gosh, we haven't done.
I was about to ask, do y'all have the link that you need to go to?
Yes, but we also have not done council reports. If I had been a little more savvy here, we could have done our council reports and then got into executive session.
You can do that. Just
okay.
Just table his motion temporarily.
Can I do that?
I don't know. Who's our parliamentarian? Jack is, right?
No, I am.
Dan is now.
Dan is now.
Can we just
put Robert's Rules of Order? But I think for the purposes, the motion is there, and if we have the minutes reflect that council reports were that this motion by unanimous consent was set aside to do council reports, I think we'll be fine.
Okay. Okay. So without objection, we will go to council reports and then we'll go into the executive session that we just voted on. All right. So, and just to be clear, I think when we go into, well, actually, when we come out of executive session, I don't think we would have any motions that we would be taking. So we'll finish up all of our regular business here, and then we will go to executive session and probably not come back to this call except to adjourn. Is that right? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So having said all that, we'll do our council reports. Except for that, oddly enough, the city clerk's report is first, and then the mayor's report, and then the council report. So we're going to go in the advertised order. John, do you have anything you want to say?
No, all good. I pass.
Okay. I am also going to pass. Council, let's. Donna's not here, so I'm lost. So Connor is next.
All right, two really quick things. My ride is cruising. Just in March here, we had 2,327 completed rides in the month. That's like well over 70 some rides a day. It's tough because, like, the pandemic happened last March, so we can't get a real apples to apples comparison. But I'm sure the mayor and others would be interested. We've saved a ton of CO2 over the course of this. Engagement is way up. Agency of Transportation seems excited and committed to making sure it succeeds in funding it. We also have a bunch of other communities interested in it, so everybody's watching Montpelier on this. I think Lieutenant Governor Molly Gray might be taking a ride on it next week, so that could be fun for Earth Day. And then just the other thing, Sarah Berger, who's sort of a local community activist, has completed a map of all the tiny libraries. What are they called? The tiny neighborhood library things in Montpelier. So I can forward that to city staff and maybe advertise that on social media, because that's pretty cool. So that's it for me. Thanks.
Jay.
I'm going to pass. Thanks.
Okay, great. Dan.
So I guess I'll report that I was asked by the Senate Government Operations Committee about a week and a half ago to testify on the Montpelier charter change for non-citizen voting. Myself and actually John Odom testified at that. I gave more of a recitation of some of the history and constitutional background of this, and it seemed to get a generally positive reception in the committee, although we'll have to see where it goes from there. But I did provide that testimony, and as always, it's fun to go up there, even if it's virtual.
Great, thanks for doing that. All right, Jack.
I'll pass.
Okay, Lauren.
Yeah, just a couple quick things. One, there is a community survey out, and Cameron might be able to tell us when that closes. I have April 19th in my head, but I might have made that up. But this is through the Social and Economic Justice Advisory Committee, and our consultant, Creative Discourse, had helped put this together. So that is out. It's been shared on social media, Front Porch Forum, and then some hard copies have been given out in various parts of town. So hope a lot of people can fill that out. Really hoping to hear from a lot of people and get some great input. And thanks to everyone who has taken the time to fill that out so far. Also just wanted to thank, we had some great turnout for the Montpelier Police Review Committee hearing it was April 5th, and got a lot of thoughtful input that we'll be wrestling with in the coming weeks, but also welcome additional input as that process continues. And last thing, I just wanted to float out there, having, as I started the meeting, just gotten my first vaccine, just curious of when we might think that if we are all vaccinated, we might be able to start thinking about in-person meetings with some still version of accessibility in various ways for people. So I just wanted to start churning on that. That's it. Thanks.
Great. Either Bill or Cameron.
Cameron, do you have any detailed stuff?
Not particularly. I was going to follow up with Lauren. The Social and Economic Justice Committee survey is kind of, as far as I understand it, open until we get the amount of responses that we want, or we think was not going to happen. So open for the time being, I think. And we will be back with some more detailed opening plans for y'all. I don't have a timeline on that.
And again, we're keeping an eye on the guidance that we get from the state for public meetings and reopening City Hall and all that. So I'd just like to weigh in. I'd like to thank the council for their indulgence. I've had 2 or 3 weeks here of a family issue, which is slowly resolving, or at least one chapter of it, with more to come. So thank you. I've been Luke here, and that leads me to thank Cameron and the staff of our fabulous team who have kept everything going, really without skipping a beat. Really couldn't have better people, and I really appreciate the way they've had my back. So thanks to everybody, and I will be back hopefully tomorrow to Vermont for a week or so, and back and forth. But thank you. That's it. That's all I've got. Oh, except for the executive session, of course.
Okay, thank you. And just to be clear, I think we have some staff joining us for the executive session. And I am not entirely sure who all that is going to be. I think it might include Kelly and Cameron and Bill. No, not Cameron. Okay.
Someone has to keep this open.
Oh yeah, right. Okay. And who else is Mike Miller joining us?
If he's still here, he can.
Or
I think this is. Yeah, it's pretty quick update actually, but
okay. Okay.
I don't think Nick's here.
I don't think he's here. Okay.
Kelly, you don't have to join if you don't want to.
I am happy to join. I do not have the link, and I am happy to do whatever you would like me to do.
Just send it to you,
I'm
Kelly.
I'm not sure it's super necessary, Kelly, to be honest.
Okay. I'm happy to just
we're also happy to have you.
Okay. Thank you. I am happy to sit this one out then. I'll be there if you need me.
Okay. All right. So I guess it's just Bill then. Okay. Great. All right. So we've already voted to go into executive session. So we are going to do that now. Thanks, everybody. And have an excellent evening if you're signing off. Otherwise, I'll see the rest of you in the other link.